Test, test. Are we live? All right, ladies and gentlemen. I only did 2 of those. I only did 2. How about now? Any echo now? All right, we'd like to go ahead and call this economic update forecast workshop to order. I'm sorry, gentlemen, but I'm really hot. Are y'all hot?
Is it me?
I'm dying here. You know?
There must be a shirt over there that says something.
Coleman, we got
No. I mean, I would never do this, but, oh my goodness, whew, man, I'm just soaking up. Oh, I didn't even realize this. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I would hate to brag. I'd hate to brag. Let me just go ahead and put my jacket back on here. And now.
Mr. Attorney, can you remind us of the rules of decorum for the City Commission meeting?
Oh, now I'm ready to ask for an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Clark, second from Commissioner Coleman. Any comments, questions on the motion from the dais? Public comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Dallas, why don't you come on up here and introduce our economic update forecast?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. When we started this year's budget process, the Commission expressed interest in some forecasting of the economy as we go into our next year's budget. So we've invited Public Finance Management Group, PFM, who acts as the city's financial advisor in a number of aspects, to come present to the Commission. We've got 2 presenters tonight. The first is Stanley Geber, who joined PFM in 2019. He possesses expert understanding of market conditions, demographic trends, commercial and residential real estate development across the Florida market. He also works extensively with public and private interests and local communities on special projects such as land use, community redevelopment, defense contracting, and strategic planning. We're also joined by Jeremy Neidfeld, who has been with PFM since 2005 and is a graduate of the University of Florida. He also received his master's degree from the University of Florida, and he is a registered municipal advisor. Jeremy has provided transaction support for the city of Newberry and other entities in Florida and South Carolina through a variety of financing alternatives to include negotiated and competitive bond offerings, privately placed bank loans, rate notes, commercial paper programs, and lines of credit. Jeremy has significant experience in advising on both capital planning projects, comprehensive modeling, and complex debt structuring programs. So with that, I will turn it over to Stan.
Welcome, sir. Thank you for coming to speak to us tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Glad to be here, and it's nice to be back in Newberry. We were part of Fishkind and Associates for 30 years, so I worked with Hank for 30 years, and we've done a lot of work, in Alachua County and Gainesville, so it's a pleasure to be back here. We joined PFM in 2019 and have been doing all of our work traditionally with PFM now. So we were asked to provide an economic outlook for the national, state, and local markets. And so we wanted just to kind of highlight and touch on some of the main points shaping the U.S. economic outlook. 4 or 5 main items. Top on everybody's list, of course, is the war in Ukraine. The question about second is how much momentum is there in the U.S. economy? The U.S. economy is really pretty strong. And how much structural change has occurred in the economy as a result of COVID? Structural change being the things that really change the way we do business as opposed to the normal cycles up and down. So there's 2 aspects to economic activity. One is that cyclical kind of a change, and the other is the structural change. And COVID really had a lot of influence on the structure of the national economy. Then there's inflation and the inflation trajectory and how important is that in economic activity. And finally, government spending, monetary and fiscal policies, both the Federal Reserve Board and the Congress and the Senate, what kinds of spending activity the federal government is going to undertake. When the national economy and the private side of the economy is really strong, the federal government can step back. But when the national economy and the private side economy weakens, that's the best time for the federal government to step forward to support the national economy. So we want to kind of telescope in on each of those main points, talk a little bit about the war in Ukraine. First off, it's a massive human toll, a risk to democracies both in North America and to Europe and all over the world. Assuming that the war is contained within Russia and the Ukraine, the effects on the global economy once the shock is passed will be relatively modest. But those shocks will impact transmission channels, supply channels for energy, for food, for rare earths and metals and other mining and elements. If Russia remains in Ukraine, the energy market disruption will be limited. And so we had, an early spike to oil prices, and oil prices are coming down now as markets adjust both to the demand for gasoline and also the changing of the mix of the types of fuels that we're going to use. Oil prices, West Texas Intermediate peaked at around $125 a barrel. That's up 100% to pre-pandemic levels. As of the past month or 6 weeks, prices have come down almost 30%, down to $90 a barrel. So it's still down, significantly off the peaks, and that's led to gasoline prices coming down from $5 to $4, but it's still like 50% higher than it was pre-pandemic levels. So pre-pandemic, we were at about $60 a barrel. Now we're at 90, so it's about a 50% increase over pre-pandemic levels. So that's, very significant. The good news is that high oil prices are stimulating higher supply. So drilling and production in the U.S. is increasing, and that's going to help moderate the prices over time. So you can see the West Texas oil prices down about 30%, 30 to 40% over the past month. Clearly, we're on the downside trajectory of oil prices. So we think oil prices have peaked for the summer, peaked for 2022, and are likely to continue to fall to around $60 to $80 a barrel, translating to around $3.75 a gallon, probably by the end of this year. We mentioned that the increase in prices has increased the production activity. So U.S. rotary rigs drilling has gone up. In the pandemic, at $80 a barrel, new drilling in the U.S. was almost non-existent, but it's tripled in just a couple of years as a result of higher and higher oil prices. So domestic production is increasing significantly. The effects of the war in Ukraine is going to have a very steep and dramatic impact to the Russian economy, to the degree that Europe and or the U.S. goes into a mild recession. Russia looks to be, somewhere on the order of a depression, 8 to 10% decline in GDP in Russia, at least through the back half of 2022 and into early 2023. In terms of momentum and the strength of the U.S. economy, consumer spending is driving the U.S. economy. It's about 2/3 of the national economy. Consumer spending and GDP has been really strong. We had the deepest and most severe recession that we've had since the Great Depression. As a result of the pandemic, GDP fell by 30% in one quarter. It's effectively at depression-type levels, but it was very, very short-lived. It only lasted for a few months. And then the return was equally strong, on about a 30% increase over the subsequent quarter. So GDP has come back, and then subsequent to the initial effects of pandemic and recession, GDP has really been very strong, on the order of 6 to 8%, which is 2 to 3 times what it was pre-pandemic. So a lot of that activity is due to the structural change, the shift in consumer behavior, and additional spending that was created by the federal government. As the federal government sort of pulls back and people adjust to the new normal, GDP is naturally going to slow. And so in the first 2 quarters of this year, of 2022, we had negative GDP growth. Historically, that's like always a recession, but that's not the official definition of a recession. So 2 quarters of negative GDP growth is not very happy, but it's not the official definition of a recession. So the official definition would also include a sustained period of slowing economic or negative economic activity, and mainly that means jobs and wages. And employment markets have been really strong. So we're not technically in a recession yet, but obviously the first half of 2022 was pretty weak, and you can't have a really strong and growing labor market while you have declining economic activity. So those things have to meet at some point later on, either this year or sometime in 2023. And then the question becomes, when they meet, how bad is that meeting of those 2 lines? Does that mean negative growth and negative employment gains, or is it just kind of skirting the recession and a recession and a net zero activity? So we'll take a look at that going forward as well. Right now, Wells Fargo is clearly in the recession camp. Moody's Analytics is, we don't really think so. It's about a 50-50, and they're looking for later out in 2023, maybe 3rd or 4th quarter, while Moody's is like 1st quarter, it's the end of the world. So, I'm sorry, Wells Fargo is 1st quarter, it's the end of the world. So sometime in 2023, we're looking at a significantly weaker economy than we see today. We are looking for declining gains in employment growth and the potential to skirt a recession sometime towards the middle part of 2023. Whether we actually get to recession or not, maybe it's not that important, because the question then becomes, what's the difference between zero growth and a little bit of negative growth? It's very much the same. It doesn't feel that great. We're already feeling the impacts of rising interest rates and slowing housing markets, and we're seeing that clearly in the real estate numbers as well. The components of GDP are showing where the negative growth is occurring, so mainly in net exports, the war in Ukraine, trade barriers with China, trade barriers with Europe, trade barriers with Mexico and with Canada are all leading to a net decline in net exports, despite the higher oil prices. And then the government, the federal government is pulling back with the end of the initial pandemic relief program before the spending that's with the latest congressional bill. We see federal government spending pulling back. So really, exports and government spending is a drag on the national economy, and we're seeing declining numbers in inventory and investments, and we see relatively reasonable strength in consumer spending during 2022, but most of the growth in 2022 in consumer spending was due to inflation. So it's not like people are spending a lot more because they have a lot more and they are very robust in their spending desires. It's just because the prices are up, they got to spend more money. Net change in farm payrolls, we're adding on the order of 500 to 600,000 net new jobs a month. By the second half of 2022, we see net job growth slowing considerably, but then in July, we had 500,000 net new jobs. And so the employment market is still doing pretty well. The fact that...
Can I pause you right there?
Sure.
Because I've been struggling with these stats. are the jobs that are being added the people coming back who are out in COVID, and so they're not truly new jobs, or are these factoring in and equating for everybody that stopped working during the shutdown? Are these just folks coming back to the labor force, and so it's an artificially inflated number because these are people returning? Or are they really new jobs?
Yeah, it took us up until mid-2022 to make up all of the losses from the pandemic. So right now, we just hit even. So a lot of those were replacement jobs, but there's a lot of dynamics in those replacement jobs. You know, some of the job loss in the pandemic was old guys like me just stepping back and saying, you know, I'm out. And the baby boomers are aging into the 65-plus age category at 10,000 people a day, and they'll do that for the next 5 or 10 years. So there's a lot of people leaving the labor force and exiting out. And that's a structural issue, which is different from just the cyclical issue of, of a recession and a growth cycle. So a lot of those new jobs, or a lot of the job growth, is replacement both from the destruction of businesses and the effects of the pandemic, but also from the baby boomers exiting the labor force and being replaced by the younger workers coming up. So there's a lot of dynamics within that. And that is it's a really important point, because that also affects schools and school-age kids. The same kind of dynamics in these demographic bubbles in the older generations are also demographic bubbles in the younger generations. And so that affects the demand for elementary schools or high schools. You know, for the next decade, if we've got, you know, a demographic bubble now in age 0 to 5, what kind of school do we build? Do we build hybrid schools? Do we build elementary schools? Can we convert them and age the schools up to the high schoolers, you know, when they get there? So those kind of demographic bubbles are really important to think about in terms of how it affects the real world spending in the local community. We talked about negative GDP growth for the first half of this year, and you can't sustain 500,000 net new jobs a month and have declining overall economic activity. So we expect employment growth to slow naturally. We're already seeing some of those numbers in the first couple of quarters of 2022, and we'll expect almost net zero growth by early 2023. And again, that becomes the question of, do we have sustained long-term, do we have sustained decline in economic activity, which would be a recession, or do we have just no job growth? You know, either way, the economy in 6 to 18 months is going to look considerably weaker than it does today. Job openings, total job openings that are unfilled are around 11 million jobs in the national economy. So we're creating 500,000 or filling 500,000 net new jobs a month, but there's a big backlog of job openings as baby boomers leave, as the gig economy takes hold, as people are able to work from home and work from anywhere, and it really affects the demographics as well as the population growth and changes and where populations move to. You know, do they need now to be located in the major cities of the U.S., you know, San Francisco and L.A., New York and Boston, or can they come to Newberry and work from home? You know, if we've got really good internet and T1 capability and they've got millisecond connectivity, they don't need to go to New York. They don't need to go to Orlando or Sarasota. They come to Newberry. So that's a real phenomenon, and people would rather do that. You know, I'd rather be able to pay $100,000 less for a really nice home in a nice community than be crammed in the city and have the high costs of living in the city. So I think Newberry is going to benefit from some of these kinds of changes going forward, but it takes a while to shake out. Initial jobless claims is a really good indicator, and we really like to show it because it's a weekly indicator. The data are published every Thursday, and they're made public on Saturday. The jobless claims number, the net new weekly jobless claims number below 300,000 is a sign of a growing economy. Right now, we're on the order of 200 to 250,000 net new jobless claims. So the jobless numbers, the most current stuff through August of 2022 suggests that we're nowhere near a recession. You know, the jobless claims number have been creeping up throughout 2022, increasing on the order of 25% in recent months, but we're not at recessionary levels yet. On the other hand, you know, the trend is clear. We haven't really had too many months where, you know, we've dropped 50,000 jobless claims in a month. So over the past 6 months, you know, it's been a steady increase in jobless claims, and that points to 6 to 12 months down the road when new jobless claims may well exceed 300,000, and that would be a sign of impending recession. Not there yet. In terms of inflation, inflation is useful to look at in terms of what are the drivers of inflation. Is it just the price of goods and the price of manufactured goods and the shipping costs, which can be cyclical, or is it wage-driven? If it's wage-driven, it tends to be structural. It's harder to tamp down inflation when all the inflation is being caused by an increase in wages. So wages right now are keeping very close pace with inflation. Wage increases are becoming structural, and that's driving inflation in the U.S. to some degree. And the fact that, you know, we're looking at $15 an hour and higher mandates from the state suggests that over the next 2 to 3 years suggests that that wage inflation is going to be with us for the foreseeable future, you know, for the short term at least. As we mentioned before, inflation and retail sales, the growth in retail sales has been really pretty strong on a month-over-month basis. You know, growing at 0.5% to 1% per month is a 8 to 10%, 12% per year growth in retail sales, but it's almost all inflationary. Single-family housing starts, you know, in the pandemic recession, single-family housing starts dropped well below 500,000 net new starts a year, seasonally adjusted annual rates. And those numbers came back in a really strong fashion, in a much stronger fashion than anybody ever expected, because so many people were disrupted and so many people moved around. People were very concerned at the outset of the pandemic that this was going to kill the housing market. And instead, it reignited the housing market. And that really led to a lot of supply disruption and the spike in lumber prices that we saw over the past 2 years. But as of April 2022, housing starts are down significantly, builder sentiment is down significantly, and we're heading towards, you know, some of the almost recessionary levels in the housing markets. You can still have a pretty good economy and have a crummy housing market. That's what we had from 2008 to 2015. You know, we had a growing economy. Well, after the recession, we had a growing economy, but we had a really miserable housing market. So you can have that. But when you have slowing job growth and impacts to the tourist market and high oil prices and rising interest rates and a crummy housing market, you know, you tend to tip the economy towards recession. The U.S. economy is really very resilient. it is a very big ship and it doesn't turn very fast. So it takes a number of these sort of macroeconomic conditions to tip the needle towards recession, but then it usually takes some sort of a shock to the economy to tip it into recession. And, in the past, the shock has been, failures on Wall Street or the collapse of the dot-com industry. But the shocks now include both the after effects of the pandemic as well as the shock of international war. So those are the kinds of things that, when you take them all together, the likelihood for recession, 6 to 12 to 18 months down the road becomes much higher. So let's take a look at the post-pandemic economy and sort of see how the effects of the economy and the pandemic impacted the economy. Artificial intelligence and automation, those were structural trends at play in the national economy well before the pandemic, but they were exacerbated by the pandemic. And so a lot of digitization, computerization, international trade, the push towards automation and artificial intelligence, a lot of those things got a jump start, and those trends and those trajectories were already in place, but they really ramped up during COVID. Globalization, people have talked about the end of globalization and building more chip manufacturing plants in the US and locally sourcing, our needs domestically in the US. And so people started to talk about the end of globalization. It may be the end of commodities trading globally or a slowing of commodities trading globally, but it is a dramatic increase in intellectual trade and in digital trade. And so stuff that you ship on boats may slip, but the intellectual globalization that's occurring is only occurring at a faster and faster rate. So it's certainly not the end of globalization. It may be a slowing of commodities, but certainly not of intellectual trade and of digital trade. Immigration has been significantly slowed by federal policy as well as by the pandemic. The pandemic effectively ended immigration for almost a year, to the extent that 10,000 baby boomers a day are leaving the workforce, and we're not replacing them with similarly educated or similarly skilled people. We're in need of an increased workforce. The national economy grows based on productivity, which is how much work you can produce with the materials and equipment that you have, and by the growth in the labor force. So if we stop growing the labor force by ending immigration, the national economy is just simply going to grow slower. And so that's what we're looking at right now, and certainly the post-pandemic period and slowing of immigration has something to do with the number of unfilled jobs in the national economy. There's a lot of income inequality as well. So the top, whatever tier you want to look at, the top 1%, the top 2, or the top 5, or the top 10% has captured much more of the national wealth than the bottom 50% of the national economy. And that disparity between the top 1 to 10% and the bottom 50% is growing significantly faster, and it has been since 1975, 1980. So we're seeing a significant disparity in income inequality, and that translates into the ability to buy cars, the ability to afford private education, the ability to afford health care, the ability to afford housing. And we're talking about the bottom 50% of the national household population. So one way to address demand and economic growth in the domestic economy is to enable that bottom 50% to somehow elevate their standard of living. And we sort of have two choices. We can significantly increase wages and give them a lot more money, and they'll do better. If we don't give folks a lot more money, then we're going to have to give them social services. We're going to have to give them free health care. We're going to have to give them free education. We're going to have to give them free transportation. We have to give them the things that they would otherwise have spent those wages on that they don't have. And so that's the balance, and that's how to raise up the income inequality. If we could get the jobs and if they could fill the jobs, that would, it's a choice of, do we pay them the wages or do we provide the services? But that's the disparity. In the meantime, we're not doing much about that nationally.
I just need to interrupt you for 1 minute because we have two more meetings and we're coming up on 30 minutes. I think what the commission was really hoping for was to tone down some of these global things that are happening to help them make some better predictions for here locally in the future.
Okay.
So if you've got a section of tonight's presentation that kind of hones in on that, maybe we could just sort of jump to that part and talk to the commission about how do they make decisions in this volatile world.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
So I think we've set the frame and the stage. The national economy right now is growing, is reasonably strong. We're getting jobs. We anticipate a recession probably sometime in the mid to latter half of 2023. And again, if we don't have a recession, the growth will probably go to zero, and it'll feel like a lot like a recession. So sometime next year, the economy will probably look a little slower than it does today. The question is, what does that mean for us locally?
I don't know what that was.
That was the end. That was the end. Yes. There's a slide that's missing, which is the population growth. So I did two slides on the local economy. One was the population growth of the city of Newberry over the past 40, 50 years, and the other is the employment growth in the city of Gainesville. Let me just pull up the slide that I can talk to in terms of local population growth. So population growth in the city of Newberry around 1980 was like 2,000 people, not very big. It's about 8,000 people today. The share of population in the town has grown from a little under 1% of the county's population to like 4.5% of the county's population. So as a share of growth in the immediate area, Newberry is gaining increasing share over time. And so the question is, if you take that rate of increasing share and you apply it to the increasing population of Alachua County, and you look at the Bureau of Economic Business Research, University of Florida, population projections, where does that leave us in terms of municipal population growth, say through 2050? So we looked at both the medium and the high series growth. Typically in Florida, we've always performed somewhere between the medium and the high series. So looking at those two series of growth, it suggests by 2050 that Newberry's population will be 100% greater than it is today. So at least 16,000 people within the next 30 years, 25 to 30 years, adding 8,000 on top of the 8,000 that there is today. That doesn't take into account the supply side, the on-the-ground development and construction. It doesn't take into account, what folks in Gainesville are going to do. So, if you're not going to approve Plum Creek on the east side of town in downtown in Gainesville, where's that growth going to go? And so to the extent that you have an accommodative land use plan and make those acres available, this becomes a natural place for that growth to occur if it can't occur in the other places throughout the county. So, at least from the demand side population, we're looking at least 100% growth in the next 20 to 30 years in the
So
community.
let me stop you right there because I think that is a really pertinent point for us to consider and people watching to consider. If our Alachua County government was more open to spreading out the growth of Alachua County, the western part of Alachua County would have a little bit of the burden taken off of us. But because we have shut down half of the county to those types of developments, that puts an overburden on the other part.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. And that's typical in most places. So in Orlando, like in the 1990s, they closed the Naval Training Center. It was like, almost 800 acres, 1,000 acres in the middle of almost downtown. And the plan was to build a hugely dense residential community within the Naval Training Center. And all the cities adjacent to that said, we don't want the density, we don't want the population, we're not going to fix the roads. And so they cut the development at the Naval Training Center by thousands of units. And all that growth went west to Lake County and Western Orange County and Groveland and Mascot and places like that, out on Highway 50, 40 miles, 35 miles west of town. Same thing here. Gainesville doesn't have the urban density that Orlando does, but it's very much similar kind of a situation.
All right, Commissioner Coleman?
I noticed there's not a whole lot of farm stuff in there, so I was texting to find out how much on fertilizing some hay fields. Last year, it was $640 a ton. This year, it's $1,440 a ton. So if that's not a depression when these fine folks go to that grocery store, because that's the end user. Liquid nitrogen is up 72%. So I think we're in a recession myself, but
I know when I leave Publix, I'm depressed.
yeah, the food cost is unbelievable.
Yeah, a lot of commodities have increased in price significantly. Those commodities, the rate of inflation may come down, but the price isn't going to come down. And, for some of those commodities, for some of the agricultural products and the fertilizers, those prices can be cyclical, just like lumber for construction. Lumber prices spiked at 1,600 board foot or something like that, and now they're down to like 800 or 900. So those prices can come down. But then there are, structural issues and structural changes that makes the farmer and the agricultural folks step back and say, why do I want to keep doing this?
Exactly.
And, 25 years ago, the World Wildlife Federation hired us and they said, we want to know the impacts of global warming on forestry in North Florida and how it's going to affect, put all the silviculture folks out of business. And I was like, I don't know. So I called them up and I said, I asked them, what are you guys going to do about global warming? It's really bad news, in 75, 100 years, you won't be able to grow trees here. Well, what about that? And they said, we're not going to be in business in 75 years. We're going to stop growing trees in 25 years and we're going to build houses. We're not going to be doing that anymore. So that's the kind of a structural change, when you can't afford, when you're only selling hay at X per bundle, and your cost of materials go up 2- and 3-fold, you're going to step back and say, when the developer comes by and says, I want to offer you $50,000 to $100,000 an acre for developable land, you go, okay.
Okay, we're getting, coming up on 45 minutes. I know we have another person to present during this workshop. Was there another a slide that's kind of specific to our area, region, one last point, thought you want to leave the commission with before we segue to the second half?
Not much. I think just the last one, just to talk a little bit about, the components of employment growth locally. And basically, the strong suits in this town are education, business professional, and leisure services. And those are all the things that are slowing in 2022. And that suggests, a slowing employment market in Alachua as well. So I think that's about it. I thank you for your time and your attention, and, feel free to reach out if you've got questions, if you need me to elaborate on some of the additional points, feel free to reach out to me and Jeremy.
We appreciate that.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much
Thank
for
you for
coming. I know
having
we've
us.
been waiting
Yep.
to have this conversation tonight, and Dallas will make sure we have everybody's email to have those follow-up
Great.
questions.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Mayor. Jeremy Needfelt with PFM. Mine's much shorter than Stan's. Well, appreciate y'all having us up. I know that, this has been top of mind for Dallas for over a year. We've been in discussions just about market and some of the options that, the city may look to secure financing. So I've got, a short presentation. We're going to do an overview of the capital needs that we've been talking through. A very brief market update, kind of honed it in just on the niche that the city's going to be looking at. We're not going to talk about the broad market, and then some financing considerations, and then any questions along the way about the market, happy to answer, just because this is a limited scope. So if there's something you don't see you want to ask about, happy to dive into that. With the City Hall, with the roads projects, and with the water main expansion, there's three major priorities that are coming up in the next year. These are significant projects for the city. That's something we've been analyzing. There is going to be a significant impact and increase to the debt per capita and the dollar borrowed versus the market value. So that's something that we're going to want to manage as we go through the process and secure funding. Something we look at is how long is the asset? City Hall, that's a long life asset, 30 years. Roads, depends on the type of road, but 10, 15 years, something like that is common. And then the water main, that could be medium or long-term. That'll tell us where on the curve we want to focus. So the short end of the curve, everybody's seen the activity with the Fed funds updates with the market on the short end of the curve. Short end of the curve is up 300 basis points, so 3%, which is significant. That's good for cash on hand. So for investment of proceeds through funds, that's a good thing. On the debt side, that's a bad thing. So we look at the 7-year to the 30-year typically when we talk about long-term financing. So the borrowing rate is up 150 basis points. So the short end of the curve is up 3%. Where we look at the 10-year is about 1.5%. That's a significant increase over the last year. You can see on the bottom, that table shows the weekly up until the end of July of what the changes were. And you can see some pretty significant weeks in red and green. The last Fed market update, Fed funds target was at the end of July, and you saw a huge rally at the end of July. So we're about 50 basis points better now than we were in the middle of June, which is good. Something to point out on the top, and we'll talk about it a little further, is how flat the yield curve is. That's also a good thing for when you're looking to borrow. The flatter the curve, that means you're not getting charged a premium for that inflation expectation, which is what we typically see with a normal shaped yield curve. The 10-year spot, so this is the U.S. Treasury rates. In the municipal market, we can look at a municipal index. If you're issuing public debt, the city won't most likely do that. So we look at the 10-year U.S. Treasury. That's the curve that the banks use. You can see over the last year that it's up significantly, but it did come down a little bit since June. This is important for us to show what the range is. So if you look at the bars, the gray area bars, that's the range of where rates have been over the last 10 years. So as you can see at the front end of the curve, we're at the top. So 3.5% is the top of the range. It's a flat curve, so once you get out, we're a little bit below the max. And on the 30-year, we're still closer to average than the max. But that's where the range is, and we're certainly towards the top of that range. This is the slope. Again, this is a good thing for long-term borrowing. It means there's the pressure with, recessionary pressure versus inflationary pressure, and those are the things that are sort of forcing a flat yield curve. So a flat yield curve means your investments on the short end of the curve are earning about what you're borrowing on the long end of the curve. So there's some parity there. So we talk a lot about the 10-year range, and that, we're at the top of the 10-year range, especially inside 10 years. If you look at a 20-year range, you can see that there has been a general trend towards when the pandemic hit. So the pandemic hit, we had ultra-low rates, rates spiked, but came back a little bit to where it's about the average over the last 20 years. So while we're at the high end of the 10-year cycle, we're a little below average for the 20-year cycle. And then Dallas asked me just to touch on financing considerations, the timing for when you want to access the market, what type of process you would do to access the market. The city in the past has done a bank loan process where you go to banks and ask them through an RFP to give proposals on what they would bid on your structure. So you get an interest rate, you get the terms. That's something that we negotiate directly once a bank is selected to come up with the terms, whether it's amortization structure, prepayment flexibility. The city has had debt that was issued in a high interest rate environment that we were able to prepay when rates went lower. So there are those options that we can build into the loan. The timing for this sale, he asked me to bring my crystal ball. And I think he joked a year and a half ago is probably the right time. But just generally, you want to avoid holidays. You want to avoid Fed announcement. There's major economic announcements that are made. So you kind of want to time it to where it's not going to be a severe market disruption. Issuing debt and having proposals come in the second week in November would not be what we would recommend doing. That's typically a very volatile time with midterm elections. And the best time to borrow is when you know what the need is. When you're getting ready to go out for a contract or when you know the amount, then you can secure the loan and then you can move forward with the project. And that was it for the prepared material.
All right. Does anybody have any questions about forecast? That was, we've been having this conversations with all of these capital outlay projects. When's the right time to buy? I think we got some good hints there. I didn't see a crystal ball come out, so we might have to cut your consultant fee in half because you did bring the ball.
Well, we pushed the meeting out a month so that rates could come down a little bit.
All right. Any questions? No? We appreciate that.
Okay.
That helps us internally in our conversations as we move forward, making these decisions. So
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you so much for working with us, and we're sorry for the delay.
No, it's just part of the discussion. You don't want to take all your debt down at once. So I think having the projects separated from when it's time to do those projects makes sense, and then building in those key features that gives you flexibility in the future, like y'all have done in the past, is the prudent approach.
All right. Well, we appreciate it so much. Thank you guys for coming.
Sure.
I'm not going to hold off on comments until we get to the other because we have 3 meetings tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and adjourn. And then we are now in a city commission meeting. Just moving my agendas around here. So I'm going to call the regularly scheduled Newberry City Commission meeting to order. I'll start with the approval of the agenda as it was published. I have no modifications. I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Martin. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor for the dais? Public comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I'd like to invite Reverend Joy Glanzer to the dais to give tonight's invocation. If you would please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will follow. Reverend Joy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please pray with me. Heavenly Father, we're gathered here again this evening to do the work of the people. Please guide our city officials to make decisions that will not only be healthy for our citizens, but will keep us on the path to a bright future. By your grace, may we see our agenda be carried out in a most ethical way and to the highest standard. We're truly blessed to be in this community, and we give thanks for our abundance. May we show charity to those citizens who are in need, and may we all open our hearts to help those the most who have the least. And let us not lose sight of what is most important after all, Lord, loving our neighbor. We pray for the continued healing of our beloved city manager, Mike New, that he continues to get stronger so that he can come back to us. And finally, Lord, we pray not only for peace in Newberry, but for our state, the nation, and the world. In thy precious name we pray. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Glanzer. We appreciate you. All right, we have no presentations tonight, so that's going to take us right to public announcements. Ladies and gentlemen, your commission likes to hear from you early and often, so they set aside this time at the beginning of the evening. If you wanted to talk to the commission about something that's not on the agenda, you have 2 minutes to do so. If you want to talk to the commission about something that's not on the agenda that perhaps might be a little more controversial, there's another public comment section at the end where you have 5 minutes. Obviously, anything that's on the agenda, there'll be public comment before the commission takes a vote. But if you want to let us know about something that's going on, now's a great time to do it. Don't be shy, make a queue. Okay, moving right along then, I'll have a motion to approve the consent agenda as it was published. I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth, a second from Commissioner Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That's going to move us to item 9, which is a quasi-judicial. So I'm going to go ahead and read our quasi-judicial procedure into the record. Ladies and gentlemen, we are entering a quasi-judicial procedure. This means that the commission will stop being a legislative body and will become a judicial board. That means that we have to follow certain rules and adhere to a different standard of decision-making. The primary rule we must follow concerns testimony. The substantial and competent evidence standard must be met when the judicial board makes a decision. This standard states the following, and I quote, "All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record." Now I'm going to ask the attorney to read into the record the ordinance. Yes, that's what I'm going to do. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to the rezoning of approximately 6.93 contiguous acres more or less pursuant to an application by the property owner of said acreage, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing for rezoning from residential single-family RSF2 zoning district to the planned residential development PRD zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida. Tax parcel number is 01919-003-004, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2022-35, LDR 22-14, upon its reading by title only.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to ask the clerk at this time to swear in the applicant, staff, and all the participants requesting to speak. If you would, please rise. If you're here to speak to this quasi-judicial tonight, if you're not sure if you're going to speak to it, go ahead and stand up now. We can swear you in, and then we won't have to stop and do it over again. Miss Judy's going to go around. If you would, give your name and say whether you do, and then when you come back up to speak, restate your name into the record as well.
Okay, we'll start to my left and go around the room. Make sure you raise your right hand. Do you, go ahead and state your name again.
John Paul Perez.
Brian Thomas.
In the back.
Andrew Nichols.
Daniel Eby.
Bill Miller.
Jessica Carey.
Jim Tomchak.
Alan Evans.
Carly Evans. Connie Clark.
Pat Wright.
Gerald Harvey.
Sophie Lancaster. Samantha.
Chris Fox.
Do you hereby swear affirm? Do I down with someone?
James Stegler.
Okay. Do you hereby swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? You haven't do this.
Thank you all. And now we're going to go ahead and disclose any ex parte communications. Disclose where any member has physically inspected the property. Remember, ex parte communications are any conversations or transmission of information that may have bearing or influence on any voting member's decision. Commissioner Coleman?
None.
Commissioner Clark?
None.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
None.
Commissioner Martin?
No, sir.
Commissioner Maison?
None.
I'm a non-voting mayor, but I have nothing to disclose as well. I'm now going to explain the order of presentations that we're going to follow for the quasi-judicial item before us tonight. First, we're going to hear from staff with an overview. Then the applicant will have the opportunity to make a presentation with no time limit. Then we'll hear from staff with their recommendation, also with no time limit. I've not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim a third-party intervener status. That's going to lead us to public comment. Any member of the public here to speak to this agenda item will have 3 minutes to do so. Then the applicant can cross-examine, staff can cross-examine members of the decision-making body through the chair, can ask questions of applicant or the staff or any of the participants. Then we'll hear final arguments on both sides. After final arguments, the city attorney will advise the decision-making body as applicable law and the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. Then we will deliberate the application, and after deliberations, a vote shall be taken to approve conditions, continue, or deny the application. We're going to adhere to that procedure pretty strictly tonight, and we'll start with the staff overview. JP?
Thank you. John Paul Perez with the Planning and Economic Development Department. The petition is to rezone 6.93 acres from single-family to planned residential development. This was previously heard on July 25th, I believe the last time. Just a general location of the property, call it the northeast quadrant of our city. And here's an aerial view of the property. Again, currently it is single-family RSF2. They're planning to make a planned residential development. It is proximate to an active mining operation. It was originally heard by the Planning and Zoning Board on July 5th, and then again by the City Commission on July 25th. It was tabled. Some of the concerns raised by the City Commission at the time was the lot sizes are too small and there are too many lots. Here's an aerial image of the site that I've cut out some of the portions of the property just so you can see what is on play at the legal level on the ground, which seemed to be part of the conversation that was occurring at the dais. And so there is a Duke Energy easement on the property. It's 150 feet wide. 130 feet of it is within Miss Lancaster's property. 20 feet of it is in the Newberry Oaks property in their backyard. So the question, and I think it was Commissioner Coleman asked, is how much of this is developable? And it's approximately 3.6 acres is developable. The request has been modified, and I'll get into the density that they're proposing, but it's within range of what is allowed today. But because the lot sizes still don't meet that RSF2 area, they are asking for that new zoning district, the planned residential development, to accommodate the unique shape of the lot and some other constraints like that energy easement that exists there. So this is the previous plan that was presented. This is the one that the commission looked at on July 25th. There's the circulation, there's the open space, and these would be the single-family lots that would be proposed. They've since modified it. Still the same 3 elements: circulation, open space, and the single-family homes. So here we have the open space. Here is the circulation. And these are what essentially will be the lots in the future. So of the 3.6 acres, or of the site total, there's 3.6 acres that's just open space. 2.4 acres is dedicated just to the lots, okay? The new proposed minimum is 7,500 square foot lots. The new proposed minimum width is 60 feet. And about 0.9 acres of the site is dedicated to the roadway. And again, the developable area is about 3.6 acres. With 12 units on 3.6 acres, you're looking at a density of 3.3 units per acre. In the residential low density, they're allowed up to 4 units per acre, so they're still within that density requirement. within, excluding the area that is the Duke Energy easement. So they still fall within the density of the developable area. And they're doing the detached single-family, and they've brought the lot minimum width or area from 5,000 up to 7,500. So there's been significant changes to the plan since the last time the commission's heard it. And that completes my presentation.
Okay, so I heard staff with a recommendation, so that's your whole presentation?
That's my complete presentation on this.
All right.
And we are recommending approval at first reading.
Okay, we'll hear from the applicants now. You have no time limit, and you can take a little more time since we just skipped you in line.
Appreciate that. Good evening, Chris Potts with JB Bro, Director of Engineering. It's a pleasure to be in front of you guys again this evening. And appreciate John Paul giving a background on the project again. So we were before you guys last month with our request for the planned residential development. We have spoken with staff and made some adjustments just based on conversations we had with the board as well as with staff. So again, the total acreage is 6.95, and I appreciate John Paul going through the breakdown. But there's some numbers that will come back through again. So based on the survey and some other numbers, I know John Paul threw out some acreage of the easement and the developable area, but there's actually a little bit less acreage in the easement and more acreage in developable. Not much, but there still is a little bit more, which will change some of the percentages that John Paul just mentioned. But as he mentioned, the current zoning is RSF2, which allows a max density of 4 units per acre, a minimum lot area of 10,000 square feet, and a minimum lot width of 85, with the maximum height of a house of 35 feet, and then the setbacks. In addition to it, RSF2 allows these permitted uses of either single-family, mobile home, public parks, a group home, as well as a private or public school, and then home occupations. So these uses are by right, based on the city's LDRs. And so these are what RSF2 allows you to do from a use standpoint. Now, since we're requesting a planned residential development, we're only going to have detached single-family dwelling units. So we're going to limit what can be put in the property by right. So we're going to get rid of the mobile home option, schools, and the group housing, and that sort of thing. So as John Paul mentioned, the total acreage is a little under 7 acres. And so with the maximum 12 units, we're at 1.73 dwelling units. And with a minimum lot area of 7,500 square feet. So if you remember, our first presentation, our first request was 5,000 square feet. And by code, we're required 10,000. So we're kind of coming in the middle for the minimum lot area. Based on the smaller lots, we're asking just for a deviation as well in the building setbacks, just to make sure that the homes could actually fit on the reduced lot size. We're also proposing a 10-foot perimeter buffer for screening purposes, which, based on the current zoning, would not be required in general. So as John Paul mentioned, this is the PRD master plan, the new one. And so we went back through the existing subdivision that we'll be tying to Newberry Oaks, just to give some history on some densities that are surrounding us. Newberry Oaks has an average of 2.8 units per acre. If you take the total acreage of Eden's Garden, the previous master plan was at 2.45, and then we're currently at 1.73. Now, I know Commissioner Coleman asked about, well, what about buildable area? So we reduced it even further and looked at what is our density per unit on the developable acreage. So with the first request, we were at a little over 4, and now we're down to 2.9. So we're right in the range of what the subdivision to the south of us historically has been through all the different phases of the development. So from that standpoint, we feel like we're compatible with this new request. On top of it, we've had discussions with the landowner, Sophie, as well as she has her prospective builder here too, that they'll come up and speak with you guys about what is the minimum total number of lots she can to even make the project just feasible. And that's how we came up with the maximum number of 12 units. And so we decided to put together a graphic for everybody so you could see a little more in detail of what the 12 homes with the surrounding homes would look like. So as you can see, comparably with the lot sizes, I mean, they're, yes, they're smaller, but they're not significantly smaller. 2,500 square feet is a bit of a challenge to differentiate out there. The home sizes are going to match Newberry Oaks as far as square footage size. They're going to vary between 1,200 and a little over 2,000 square feet per house, depending on the model. But this, we just wanted to give a little visual so that I know we talk about the PD master plan, which has hatches and colors that, a lot of people are like, okay, well, what will it actually look like? And so based on our current master plan, this is what we think it would look like, at least from a colorization. We have the stormwater over there on the east side because that is the lowland of the property. On top of it, because of Alachua County's water quality criteria, we have to follow that, which is unfortunately increases the size of the stormwater basin. But we know that that'll meet all code requirements from the city to Suwannee as well as Alachua County. And just like Newberry Oaks, some of the southern lots there would be using some of the Duke easement as far as their lot area, similar to Newberry Oaks. And so this would be an example of the architectural style that Sophie's hoping to construct in the neighborhood. It's just a little modern flair with some country aspects to it. So that's JB Pro's presentation for tonight. Before we move on, Sophie would like to come up and talk to the board if that's permissible.
Good evening. Sophie Lancaster. My husband and I are the owners of the land. And I'd like to thank the commission for last time when we met, for basically tabling the matters to give us more time to see how we can reach a compromise and a good medium. And in it, I know Chris and Logan have spent time with the city, and I believe that what we're proposing is something that would work well for the neighborhood as well as for our interest. And just to explain some of the background, this is not something that we just stumbled on and we bought this land not knowing. Prior to purchasing this property, I did make an inquiry to the city, and I did even receive a written response to my phone inquiry noting that this property could be developed into 20 single-family homes or 36 tiny homes. So I'm not a novice to business. Obviously, you do your due diligence before you acquire any type of asset. And in my experience, even I opened up the Edward Jones office right here in Newberry. And so with that experience, we made this decision to purchase this property knowing that we had the potential and the opportunity to even develop like 20 homes. But understanding the actual process when you put the boots to the ground, we know that you have to obviously find what is actually feasible when you look at the shape of the land. And I'm so thankful for the civil engineering company we're working with and the professionals, because we weren't looking at what we could do in a maximum capacity. We were looking at what we could do that could still keep the neighborhood in a way that we're not depressing the value of the homes that are surrounding. And so in making those considerations, that's why when we initially came to the planning board, zoning and planning board, we proposed, I believe it was between 15 to 16 homes. And last time that we met, we came with, I think, maximum of 15 homes, I believe, or 16 or 17. Now my numbers are getting mixed up. But after just looking at cost estimates and studying the cost of this project, the minimum that would make it feasible is 12 homes. And as it is right now, without getting, without changing the zoning, we are able to put about 8 homes there as it is. But we're asking if you could approve an additional 4 homes, 4 families into the neighborhood that would allow us to make the project feasible. So even in this request, it's not something that was done unknowingly. We really, when we got the information and inquired and consulted the city, it was our expectation that we could do up to 20 homes. But as we reach a compromise, in honesty, is we've heard the economic report about how, we could be headed for a recession, and there's certainly like costs and things that are unforeseen when we look at inflation and rising costs of goods and things like that. So for me, my personal request is if we could stretch it between 12 to 15 homes, but if the minimum, if the maximum, the city, the commission is willing to approve is 12, then we can go ahead with that. But in my request, I would say a range because of the unforeseen costs that could come up on us as we continue the project. So my request is between 12 to 15 homes maximum. So, and I also want to introduce you to the builder. As I mentioned before in the past, that we are local. We've lived here since 2005. And my husband and I have been so heavy, like we've been committed to this community. And even in considering the builder that we would work with, we have been so blessed to partner with a local builder. And when the economic report came in regards to jobs, I mean, this will bring jobs local to local people right here in Newberry. And so further advancing our economy. And this piece of property, as you know, when I inquired with Brian in the beginning, after when we initially met, before we had any civil engineering companies or any other professionals, they mentioned that this land, they've been looking forward to develop it. So this was an opportunity to do something creative. And the PRD didn't actually come from, it was a suggestion like this could be rezoned and then something creative done so that it could be useful and actually provide more housing opportunities in our city. So I would like to introduce you to the builder and see, and they can attest and speak to, because some of the concerns that I've heard, even from the citizens that live in Newberry Oaks, were in regards to construction, traffic, how long that would take, and how would it impact them. So I would like for the builder to speak on those matters and see if some of those issues could be answered or questions could be answered and matters resolved. So I'd like to introduce Summer.
Summer Hester. My dad's Skip Harvey, which is the actual builder. I'm just going to talk for him. So we can have him up here, but it's interesting. So Dad's built for years in the city of Newberry. Pretty much everybody's probably seen his houses all over the city of Newberry. He builds a very quality house, so you're not going to get your typical tract home type that's going to devalue the neighborhood. It's going to be a very well-made, custom, more on the custom side home, just from his way of building things. He's a fast builder, if y'all know. He puts a house together in about 4 months, even with the times they are right now. So it's not going to be something that's going to be drug out. It's going to be a fast project. It'll be completed very fast. We're talking right now probably 3 to 4 houses at a time. So on a scale of 12 houses, it's not going to take us long to get in and out of there. We're taking all the lot sizes into consideration. We're building plans around those lot sizes. So we're working with an architect, and it will be all of us sitting down, and we will actually draw them to make them the most aesthetically pleasing on that lot. So it won't be just cluttered houses that barely fit it. We'll make sure that they fit the size lot and the type of lot they are. So I think that's about it.
Thank you, Sophie and Summer. So again, we're just requesting for the commission to approve our request to rezone as the Planning and Zoning Board has recommended, as well as city staff. So we're here to answer any questions that may come up. Thank you for allowing us to present again.
Okay, thank you, sir. Again, since we don't have a third-party intervener, I'll move us to public comment. Members of the public wishing to speak to this agenda item, you have 3 minutes to do so. And then again, there'll be another opportunity, once a motion is made, there'll be another opportunity for public comment at that point as well. Any members of the public wishing to speak to this agenda item? Don't be shy, come on down. You gotta let ladies go first. And don't forget to restate your name for the record.
You don't remember? Connie Clark. Well, here we are again, the request for rezoning from residential single-family to planned residential development. It violates at least 2 city ordinances. Again, the developable land is less than 5 acres. Also, the city code states that a planned residential development provide direct access to a major street. It is true that the city codes do not define major street. They aren't in charge of determining the definitions of streets. The state of Florida is. According to the Florida Department of Transportation, a major street serves these purposes, both property access and traffic circulation in higher density residential and commercial areas, penetrate residential neighborhoods, often for significant distances, and distribute and channel trips between local streets and arterials, usually over a distance of 3/4 of a mile. 11th Road is 0.3 miles. Minor streets serve both direct property access and traffic circulation in lower density residential and commercial areas, penetrate residential neighborhoods only for a short distance, distribute and channel trips between local streets and arterials, usually between a distance of less than 3/4 of a mile. This development will exit onto Northwest 11th Road, a small street in the back of a neighborhood that only carries traffic for residences living on that street. It is not a major street. At the last meeting, the commission asked the fire chief if he thought emergency vehicles could access the properties, and he mentioned the size of the roads. He also said they would be able to get in and out. The city of Newberry doesn't have an ordinance pertaining to this, but Alachua County does. According to Alachua County Code, for developments, which they are requesting, with only one access, an emergency service access shall be provided and maintained in addition to the primary access. If not, a waiver shall be provided and maintained in addition to, if not, a waiver from the requirement for a secondary emergency access cannot be obtained, but a full disclosure statement must be noted on the plat by the applicant and provide initial buyer and subsequent buyers, informing them that a waiver was granted and could potentially prevent the response of fire service, emergency medical, and emergency management at this location. In all the proposed configurations, all emergency vehicles would have to back out onto 11th Road. A comment was made at the last...
Finish your thought, ma'am, you're a little bit over time now, so just finish up that
I'm
sentence.
almost done. A comment was made at the last meeting on this subject by the commissioners as to how many houses that she could put in order to make a profit. Come back with that configuration. I listened to the tape again. The commission serves the citizens of Newberry, not developers hoping to make money. This shouldn't be a consideration of the commission when it comes to zoning. The city ordinances are the rule. This property was listed for $110,000 for
Ma'am, I'm
several
gonna have
years.
to ask you to wrap it up now. We're 40, almost a minute over time.
It was sold for $85,000, $25,000 less than asking when property values were soaring through the roof.
Thank you, ma'am.
That
We
tells you
appreciate
all.
you. Other comments? You get to state your name, sir, for the record.
Jim Tomczak. Basically, I'm going to kind of follow up a little bit on what she was talking about with the profitability. We have the city commission, we have ordinances for 10,000 for a certain reason, for space conservation, all sorts of reasons that originally went into it. The only reason why we are talking about reducing that amount is for profitability. That's the only reason. It's not like this easement was something unforeseen. It is not like it was something that was of no fault of anybody. It was always there. It was priced with it. So the only reason why we're looking to make any adjustments is that profitability. And that's what one of the reasons that the residents are not happy about it. There's no reason to be making adjustments for profitability alone. And that's fine.
Thank you, sir. Other public comment? You've been waiting very patiently, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, come on down.
Pat Wright. Well, I'm not clear on some things, because I just heard we're going to plan on doing this and plan on doing that, and I was looking to come in and have a concrete plan on the number of 12,000 or 1,200 square foot homes that they're going to have, and I don't see that. Has that been established?
This is public comment, so if you want to ask a series of questions, we'll have folks in the back taking down notes, and then we'll answer them all, but I don't want you to use your 3 minutes.
No problem.
Wait for back and forth.
I guess that's another question. What sewer system will be used? Will they be tapping into Newberry Oaks sewer facilities? Or will they have their own in this new subdivision at their Eden Gardens? Also, there was a comment made on accessing the accesses to access, one in and one out. Do we know the EMS response time going into that new Eden Gardens? And if so, with one entrance, what if that entrance is blocked? Does that put those homes at risk and Newberry Oaks homes if there's a fire? I think that's one of the major concerns. Also, if I'm not mistaken, I think section 3.6-5 designates that there needs to be 2 entrances, and also states that there is no access or structure shall be located within the front or street of any side yard. So that limits them to be using 230, I believe it's 239th Way, the street that's going into this property, and requires a second entrance into this neighborhood. So I think that's my concerns, is what portions are going to be used of Newberry Oaks, and if so, then we need to meet the standards, of Newberry Oaks, which is 10,000 square feet, period. That's my questions.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Other public comment? Switching it up. Mrs. Evans goes first this time.
That's right. That's the way it should be. So he didn't give me the black eye. I had retinal surgery, just so you know. There was a lot of bruising from it. All right. Hey, guys. I'm Carly Evans, and my husband Alan is here with me. You'll be hearing from him in a moment. We're involved with the Agriculture and Equestrian Center here in Newberry, and we own and operate a horse show production company. We call it Southeast Horse Shows, and we've been operating it for about 30 years, and we can say we're personally responsible for bringing a lot of revenue into Newberry and the surrounding areas with our horse show company. Just a quick introduction. The Eden's Garden project, their entire east property line is a shared boundary with our entire west property line. So they have, and we have a working horse farm. So whatever they're going to do out there is really going to have an impact on us. As you guys, as the mayor, the zoning board, and the commission has repeatedly stated, it's always been the city's policy to provide connectivity to adjoining properties like this. To us, especially tonight, it is still very unclear from all the plans we've seen thus far if this connectivity is being considered at all by the owners and managers of Eden's Garden, and that's a really big concern for us. In our opinion, it's now or never to attend to that connectivity. Once it's built, you can't go back, as we learned when Newberry Oaks was built, and we didn't get connectivity to them then, and we should have. So there's no going back. We do want to let you guys know that connectivity to our property and the potential with whatever we might do with our property way down the road would actually alleviate some of the traffic concerns for Eden's Garden and possibly Newberry Oaks, because that would give us another connection to State Road 26. I did want to address a comment that was made at the last meeting by the project managers in one of their rebuttals. And they asked why we, the Evans, are so worried about connectivity if we're so concerned with our privacy and the safety of our horses. And we just really want to express and make sure it's understood that this connectivity we're asking for and are basically kind of insisting on is not for personal access to our farm at this time. It is merely something that we'd just like to see on paper with the proper, right-of-way widths and stub outs to the property lines. Until such time as more development possibly occurs down the road with the West End Equestrian Center property and with the Ag Tech Park. Again, that's my big concern. We have a couple others Alan's going to share with you, but at the risk of repeating ourselves, it's now or never. Thanks.
Thank you. Other public comment? She kind of teed you up there, so you got to come down
She
now.
set me up good. Alan Evans. I had a few things here I was going to say that I think have been kind of covered, and I do appreciate the fact they're trying to compromise. You guys, I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the commission's consideration for this. It's kind of an odd development and a unique situation. The truth is, without going into a lot of what I wanted to say here, is that there's 2 acres. They're going to put 15 houses on 2 acres, a little over 2 acres. That's a lot of houses crammed into that amount of land. In support of the homeowners of Newberry Oaks, this development really is an extension of the neighborhood, and as such, shouldn't it follow the lot sizes and density requirements that already exist? Excuse me. We do agree that a PRD is the best way to allow for this, as the construction of the land will definitely need a very creative design to make it all work. However, it should be a design of 10,000 square foot lots and a total of 8 to 10 houses. When I look at this, if you had 10 houses, not 15, and you were selling them for approximately $380,000 a house, that means $3.8 million in home sales. Looking at the public records, they paid $85,000, that's already been said. They paid $85,000 for the land. It seems like there's plenty of room for profit. And to try to jack that profit and keep a narrow vision on their profit margin, to me, isn't considering the Newberry Oaks or the adjoining properties. The residents who live in Newberry Oaks, along with the adjoining property owners to the north and our land to the east, will very much be impacted by this proposed development. The decisions made now should not force any of us to pay a price in property value, the right to enjoy our land, or any inconvenience to the surrounding residents and landowners. All due respect, just because the Lancasters did not do their due diligence before they made their investment, it should not mean that the city and the residents should have to deal with unreasonable impacts. The connection we're talking about to our property isn't something that we would use until it would just be part of the foresight of development that's coming in the future. So it would hook us all the way up through WEEC to the proposed Ag Tech Park to 26, and it would just make everything flow. And the same thing with the connection out to the north boundary line that they're at. There's been a lot of people that have looked at this property, including Carly and I, who have looked at purchasing it and walked away from it for a reason. So I know they're trying to be very creative and make it work. I'd like to end with this. The developer's reluctance to consider adjoining property owners or the connectivity that would benefit the city's future plans is very bothersome to me at this point. I think a lot of us, when we haven't even gotten to the planning stage yet. These connections are going to alleviate traffic. They're going to help solve a lot of the problems and the worries that people have, I think. But we do appreciate you guys and the time you put into this. Do appreciate you guys considering and trying to do some adjustments with it. But 15 houses on 2 acres, I'm going to end it with that. 15 houses, they're talking 12 to 15 houses.
You said it. I've given you 35 seconds. I gave Ms. Clark extra time too.
Oh, I thought
You've been blinking red for a
35
while.
seconds.
Sorry.
All right,
Other public comment. Anybody else? A lot of you stood up to give an oath. Might as well come on down. You took the oath.
Jessica Carey. I'm a new resident to Newberry, originally from the Napa Valley of California. And listening to the presentation today from the first meeting about the economy and why people move to Florida, specifically Newberry, is because we wanted a better way of life. I grew up in a little town called American Canyon, which is south of Napa Valley, and I bring this up because it reminded me a lot of this beautiful town. So much so that I sold my house, moved out here. This beautiful community that's quiet, equestrian, which I absolutely love. I wanted my little girl to grow up and have horses. And then I found out I was next to a mine. And not only that, they want to build houses right next to the mine. It's bad enough that we have to be woken up from our hours or in the middle of our workday, in the middle at home, trying to have that remote lifestyle with a blast. But to do things for profitability and not thinking about the quality of life of how people who are driving down these very narrow roads, I know what development of this size can do to a community. My little small town of American Canyon was a township in the early 90s, and by the early 2000s, Walmart came in, the road of Highway 29 became the Las Vegas Strip, and the Napa Valley is a horrible place, so much so that people even who could afford to live there move. Don't let Newberry become a staple for profitability, because the people who make money are not the ones who are going to stay here. It's the people who will vote you out.
Other public comment.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I apologize in advance. I'm agitated. I'm trying not to be. The prayer earlier tonight settled me some, and then I heard more things that agitated me again.
Don't forget to give us your name.
Kristen Miller. I have gone back and watched the past 2 meetings, the zoning and then the prior meeting, watched them both, and it brings my blood pressure up, and I don't have high blood pressure. We heard so many different numbers over and over, but the teeth had to be pulled to get them. Questions were asked outright about this project, and people obfuscated over and over and wouldn't answer a simple question. And when somebody won't answer a point-blank question from me, I lose faith. And I don't want to lose faith in people. I want to think that this project is going to be something beneficial. This family purchased this land, and they have the right to develop it. As it is, we were told, after pulling teeth, that 8 to 10 homes could be put there. And then it was a gentleman, I believe, by the name of Brian, who came up under questioning from the mayor and said that Mr. Wiesman surveyed that lot and found out that actually only 3 to 4 homes could be placed there. So I don't know if it's really 3 to 4. I don't know if it's 8 to 10. We heard 28, 17, 15, 12. We've been all over the place, don't know what to believe, and I want to trust people. But I just don't at this point. I've heard a lot of justifications for doing this. Drive to another neighborhood, right where Stonehouse is. Go over there. They have all different size lots. You know what? I did drive through there. They have a main road that doesn't have houses on it that access each of these neighborhoods, and there's different price points in homes and commensurate pieces of land that go with those homes. Newberry Oaks, we all have a little bit, just enough to do a garden and a little bit of a backyard, but we all have that. There are some two-story homes, but we are, by preponderance, single-family homes, if you've ever taken a drive around the entire neighborhood. What's going on at Stonehouse is in no way analogous to Newberry Oaks, so that comparison's out the window. Don't really care what they're doing in another part of Florida, don't care what they're building, don't care what boards have passed. This is here. This is my neighborhood, and I care about it. And these folks that came here, they care. They're nothing against the Lancasters, but we want the neighborhood to feel like the neighborhood. They have the right to build, I don't know if it's 3 or 4, I don't know if it's 8 to 10. Just asking that you would do that and take into consideration the people that have come out of their homes to talk to you and ask you to consider, because I didn't see anything in the commission's purpose that restores fiscal responsibility when you've made a bad land deal. I didn't see that, and I don't mean offense to the Lancasters. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. Other public comment? You're up, might as well come on down.
I'm Andrew Nichols. The thing I just have to say about the lowering of the lot size is it's not a vote just about 10 houses or 12 houses. It is the precedent that you will be setting for this whole city, for developers. Are you willing to lower lot sizes for developers to maximize their profits? And that is what it's for. She even said as much. I applaud her honesty. But are you willing to lower those regulations for her, for these builders? And if so, who else are you willing to? Are you going to lower them for the next developers to come in? What message are you sending to the entire city that you're willing to take these regulations that are put in place for specific reasons and lower them so developers can maximize their profits? What message is that? Newberry is going to grow. It's going to develop. The question is how. The precedent you are setting with this vote will have a big impact on how this city grows. Is it going to grow in the best interest of the city or in the best interest of the people to come in and make their profits? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Other public comment?
James Stakely. Stakely, Stakey. My biggest thing is Mr. Weisman owned this property. He was a builder. He built the vast majority of what was in Newberry Oaks. Why didn't he develop it? It was already his. He could have done it. Why didn't he do it? And I agree. Newberry's going to grow. I was born and raised in Gainesville. I came out here as a kid. I've seen it grow tremendously in the last 20 years. I'm not saying we can't grow. But why didn't an owner who was a builder who built the vast majority of the houses in Newberry Oaks, why didn't he finish it?
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? Going once? Going twice? Okay, we'll move on to applicant cross-examination. Chris, did you hear anything from anyone that you'd like to cross-examine? Anything from staff, anyone from a participant? Clarify the number of houses we're asking, the acreage that we're asking them, anything?
So the development will be connected to public utilities, so water and sewer. No septic system or wells are proposed.
And I think it's important on that note that there is, like, each subdivision doesn't have its own septic system, so everyone that's connected to Newberry septic system is connected to the same treatment facility. So neighborhoods buy capacity, but they don't have their own separate facilities. So I hope that clarifies, because it's a good question, good chance to explain how that works. Everybody's sewer lines and water lines are connected to the same. If you're connected to Newberry Water and Sewer, you're connected to the same facilities.
The total developable area is over 4 acres, not 2. We're requesting a maximum of 12 units. That's our current proposition. I know Mrs. Lancaster asked for you guys to consider increasing it, but our current proposal with staff is 12. And I'm not sure if she presented it clearly enough, but before she purchased the property, she sat down with the city staff, went over what she could do, and staff recommended going through this process to increase the density for either townhomes, smaller lots, that sort of thing, because that is the trend that is going, as well as wanting those price points of varying. So that's why we're here with the requisition in front of the board. Now, our plan that we show is just concept in nature. Once we get through it, we'll work out the full engineering with staff. And, the intention of Ms. Lancaster as well as the contractor is to minimize the disturbance to the existing neighbors. And then from a fire safety standpoint, there are code requirements from the Florida handbook with that is fire trucks need a minimum of 20-foot wide with a 30-foot vertical clearance, and that'll be maintained in perpetuity. The roads are 24-foot wide paved, so on-street parking is not permitted. And we do have a turnaround. The city code allows you to go up to, I believe, about 1,000 feet for a cul-de-sac, so we're under that. So we're allowed to only have one entrance with the turnaround at the end. And so I think that covered most of the questions that were brought up. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Staff, did you hear anything that you would like to cross-examine?
So just on some of the public comments that were made, just provide some points of clarification. Final house size, right now what's being considered is the rezoning and the preliminary development plan. When we get into the final development plan, which is the next part of the planned residential development process, we'll drill down to lot sizes and elevations for homes and sizes of the homes. Right now, we're just considering the rezoning. They have 12 months to bring forward the final development plan. Should that not happen, then the zoning reverts back to the RSF2, single family. They can request an extension of that for 12 months, but there's like a reversionary clause should this not move forward, should something happen. So final house size, don't know yet. Those details are to come in the future. Utility connections, these are city utilities in Newberry Oaks currently. These are city roads in Newberry Oaks currently. The proposed rezoning, those houses will be connecting to city utilities as well. That street also will be a city street, we believe, not sure. Response times for first responders, this was routed to the fire department. That wasn't an issue that was raised by them or a concern that was raised by them, so response by first responders. It's not a known issue at this time. Access is not a known issue either. There seems to be sufficient area dedicated for right-of-way widths. The requirement for 2 entrances, not entirely sure where that's coming from. In my review of our land development regulations, I did not see a requirement for
I think the
2 entrances.
resident said that was a Alachua County ordinance.
Oh,
And I was
gotcha.
reading the Alachua
Yeah.
County ordinance said that we don't have that one.
Yeah. Connie Clark did bring up the comment about major roads. It is major or collector roads. There's various definitions of major and collector roads out there. There's various different differentiations between major and minor versions of those roads. So definitely it's not connected to an arterial. Those could be considered collector roads. Essentially, it comes down to city engineer making those determinations. So in this particular case, we believe it's a good development. It's not unlike other cul-de-sacs that exist in Newberry Oaks. Southwest 21st Circle, there's a cul-de-sac that ends there, and that has 12 lots on it. All of those being 10,000 square feet in size, though they're not dealing with unique development or unique site issues like this particular site is dealing with, or providing their own stormwater management system as well. Newberry Town Center was brought up. I don't have many comments on that one, but following that comment, there was one about precedence and reducing lot sizes. This is not the first planned residential development or planned development in the city of Newberry that has considered lot sizes less than 10,000 square feet in size, or a variety of lot sizes within the same development. This being a separate development, but oftentimes, associated with Newberry Oaks. And so if there's concern about setting a precedence, that horse has left the barn. I'm not sure what the appropriate saying here is in Newberry, but we do have functional neighborhoods, thriving neighborhoods that do have a variety of lot sizes in them. And there was a lot of focus on the word of profitability. And I don't necessarily believe profitability is the correct term. It's more feasibility. As a developer, you don't necessarily run a nonprofit. At the end of the day, you have to bring money home to feed your family. But with the high cost of construction currently, of putting in the infrastructure, of constructing the roads, as you heard earlier today, the cost of lumber, the cost of pipe, the cost of everything. The costs are, encroaching on the ability of, developers to be able to bring home the bacon, per se. Now, if Sophie Lancaster was representing D.R. Horton, I maybe would not be as sympathetic because they're a very large company with a very large portfolio, but she's a small developer. She's looking to build 12 lots, individual designed homes for families. So I don't think that she has the rapport of being kind of like a blood-sucking developer. I think she has the utmost respect for the residents and is trying to, at the same time, provide for her family as well. That's it, unless you have any questions for me.
JP, the applicant said that they met with the city, and the city is the one that suggested a higher density.
Mm-hmm.
When I look back at the history of this project, that's not the way that I read it. Can you address the history of our communications with the applicant? I don't want to get into the issue of due diligence. I think that's a personal issue, but I do want to address if we met with the applicant and suggested higher levels of density, then I think that's worth commenting on. If that's a miscommunication, then I think it's worth correcting.
Mr. Mayor, those communications are over a long period of time with me, and it wasn't just this applicant, it was every applicant that was looking at this property, or potential applicant that was looking at this property. One of the things that we suggested was approaching the board and soliciting a change, which would allow for higher density, which would then make it a financially feasible endeavor.
And I want to clarify, because this is a word that we throw around a lot between these two meetings. And I think in a layman's sense, when we think about density, we're thinking more people on a smaller area, right? We're creating more density. I think from your perspective, that word means slightly different, right? You're paying the same number, because when you tell them the zoning you could get 28 houses on, that's a zoning consideration. It's not a practical issue. But if I say I'm going to move 28 onto a smaller parcel, the applicant can say, I haven't changed the density because you could have still had that many homes. So I want to make sure that when we're using this vocabulary, we're using it in a way that we're all understanding the way that which we're using it. So when you say density, what do you mean?
Yeah, you're correct, Mr. Mayor. In the absence of zoning, with just the land use category this falls under, which is low-density residential, with the total acreage they have, in theory, they could build 28 homes because they have the acreage to do at 4 units per acre, equal roughly 28 homes. Obviously, because of the unique characteristics of this property, they can't do that. The suggestion to rezone to get higher density was a misnomer. It's not higher density, it's allowing for smaller lot sizes on the buildable area, not to get higher density overall, what they would have otherwise been allowed to build under the
current land use of low-density residential. And so that was the concept, was leave the future land use category that it already has the same, seek a rezoning that would allow them to build on smaller lot sizes, to increase the number of homes relative to what they can currently do under RSF2. RSF2, this is the last neighborhood in Newberry that's actually done an RSF2 straight zoning neighborhood, which has the 10,000 square foot lot, 85-foot wide, and that kind of thing. The only way that this property, from staff's perspective, the only way this property actually is developable is to make some accommodation to make it a feasible project by allowing for somewhat smaller lot sizes. If you take into account both the easement that is unbuildable and then also the unique shape of it, you've got a lot of sharp angles on this property that can't practically be built on, can't really be used towards the overall lot sizes. When you add all of that together, it really shrinks the amount of buildable area down to about 4 acres. And then you've got to take out your right-of-ways and that kind of thing, and that shrinks it even further. And so that was what staff's suggestion was, if you come in and ask for a rezoning that would allow for the smaller lot sizes, higher density on what's left, not higher density overall.
And the last thing under cross-examination, because I share the residents' concern when everybody's using different numbers. Now, the applicant's numbers and staff's numbers are still divergent, but much narrower than we started off with, right? But I'm still hearing residents say 15 houses on 2 acres. That's not what I heard in this presentation. What I heard in this presentation was a difference of 3.6, and Chris's number was 4.1, right? And 12 houses. Now, I heard the applicant say she'd like consideration for a range, but the application in front of us is 12 houses on, and JP or Brian, can you explain the difference between the 3.6 and the 4.1 here? Because I like that we're getting narrower here.
Yeah.
But it'd be great if we were all in agreement on what these numbers are, because they have an effect on the total when we break down the units per
100%.
acreage.
Yeah, great question. So it is 12 units. I came up with the number of 3.6 because I don't have all the cool tools that Chris Potts has. So I'm using a very rudimentary.
Let's plug for more computer equipment in the budget. Okay.
I'm using some internet-based GIS tools to get areas, and so my numbers aren't provided on the plan. And using the tools I had at hand, I came up with a rough number that was a little off, but still. The point is not lost that they're coming in.
The applicant's number you grant is right, because the applicant's number goes back to the P and Z number, which we originally started on, of close to 4 buildable acres, 2.89 not. So y'all are in agreement. His number is the right number. That's the number we're working on. And 12 is the number of units that we're asking for, not 15. Okay.
So
Ask
yes,
for consideration. Right.
Our numbers are based off the actual survey. And then we have a little more accurate way of measuring than what the city
You got
has.
cooler toys. That's what you're saying. Okay. All right. You were done cross-examination?
Yes.
We were done cross-examination. Okay, that's going to move us to members' decision-making body. Through the chair, questions. Commissioner Cole.
Okay. A little confused here. How many homes can be built on this without the zoning change?
I heard Sophie say 8, that the last meeting we were using the number 10.
That's what had me
Right?
confused.
So Chris, have you, with those cooler toys, have we zeroed in on exactly how many houses? Because I have heard the neighborhood speak loud and clear at the P and Z at both of these meetings. We're not against single-family houses. We knew that there was going to be neighborhoods, right? At the first meeting, it was more about the townhouses and the duplexes. Second meeting was more about the density, right? But they've always stood firm. This is not about just not saying no to everything, but they are talking about the density, right? So without you guys having to come for anything, is it 8 or 10?
So it'd be 8, but you got to remember it's not density, it's intensity.
Okay. Can you put up the rendering that you had there? Because I have the same question that Commissioner Coleman has here. Put the rendering of the Yeah, but I want it for everybody to see it. So the cool one that you guys did, right, that looks like this, Chris. Can you put that back on the screen for everybody?
Sure.
All right. Throw that back up there. Commissioner Cole, I'm not trying to steal the floor from you.
No, you go ahead, man, you run with it.
I'm not an engineer, but it seems like that's an awful lot of green space. That can you not just take these backyards and take this up here, move this down here, and get to the 10,000 square foot here? Is there not enough?
So you got to remember that you have to have a certain buildable area.
Right.
Duke does not allow structures in their easement. On top of it, you do not want homeowners paying taxes on property that they can't use.
But I guess my question is the existing houses on, was that 11th?
Yes.
Their backyard is in
Yes.
the easement.
Because there's a requirement with that is they had to have a buffer.
Okay.
And so they put the buffer in the Duke easement, but then on top of it, they granted so that the HOA wouldn't have to maintain the buffer. They put the buffer on the homeowner.
Okay, so for Eden's Garden,
Yes.
you're telling me that even with all that green space that the eye is visibly seeing, there's no way to get 2,500 more square feet into those lots?
No, so because you also have the 85-foot wide minimum width.
Okay.
So you have to have
And
at
then
least a minimum of
stormwater.
85, so you can have any sort of shape you want to get to 10,000 square feet, but the lot width itself has to be 80 foot wide.
Okay.
And so.
You still got the floor.
Okay, still got the floor. Last one. What's killing this? See, it's simple. Well, and I'm not saying it's killed, but number one is homework. What I'm looking at here, come on, where are you at? It's 2-point-something acres of easement that really, besides the backyard being put in it, is 2.83 acres really you can't develop. So that leaves 4.1. Without this zoning change, there's 8 houses that could be put in there. So, well,
It would be-
And zeroed it down now to 8.
Yes.
yeah,
Last meeting it was 10, this meeting it's 8.
right. So, I feel for them, I really do. But to keep it consistent with the subdivision in front of it, not considering the Duke easement, I personally think the homework was not done there when it was purchased. So, okay, that's where I'm at.
Okay, Commissioner Cole, Commissioner Maison.
It's clarification, okay, with the 8 homes. So if she chose to, she could put trailers back there.
Correct.
So then it's a matter of, do you want trailers back there? Put that house up there that she had up there, that her and her dad put up there. Or do you want that? That's what it comes down to me.
How many
And if-
trailers could you put 28 trailers?
8.
How
How many trailers can you put on that lot?
Hang on one second. I don't want to go off, like this seems like a grenade in the middle of a room right now. So before we get off on this tangent, right?
So the lot sizes for the mobile homes would be the same, but they would still be mobile homes. So it would be 8 mobile homes. On
And
top of it.
I'm looking at staff. Hang on one second, Chris. Before we get down this road, can staff verify that they, by right, could put trailers back there?
Put mobile homes on those lots because it's zoned for single-family,
Okay.
site-built homes only.
All right, so I'm opposed to grenades in roofs.
Well,
I don't want to
but-
go down there.
So the question with the mobile homes is being site built is you can bring a mobile home.
It's like
that
a
is-
manufactured.
That is tied to the ground.
Right, okay, all right. That's not true.
Okay.
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 All right, that's a different question for a different judicial quasi procedure, right?
But
I
on
don't
top
wanna
of
get
it, it could be a community center.
Right.
Or.
Daycare?
Or a home for the veterans who need
All right, guys, let's
assistance.
come back to order.
On top of it too, with Commissioner Coleman's concern about not matching the surrounding developments. We gratefully disagree from the intensity standpoint. The existing Newberry Oaks is 2.8 units an acre. Our proposition is 2.9. So as far as if you're looking at intensity and density, and that's just the buildable acreage. So we're taking out the Duke easement. So on top of
Buildable
it,
acres, it's 2.9. The rest of the neighborhood is 2.8.
correct.
And we agree with that. Just the question, don't go back to the mobile home thing, because nobody's putting mobile homes anywhere. Right.
And I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
We agree that with the application in front of us, it's 2.9 density, the rest of Newberry Oaks is 2.8.
I haven't measured the density of Newberry Oak, so I couldn't give you that, but it's...
I mean, we're in the ballpark there.
Generally, yes.
Because at your number of 3.6, we were pretty close to that. So that's...
Yeah.
So in terms of the density level, it would mirror roughly...
Correct.
The rest of the neighborhood.
Correct. You're, clustering a lot more in a smaller site, so they're providing their stormwater on site, their residential density on site, as well as accommodating for the Duke Energy easement, and altogether, it's a very similar development to what Newberry Oaks is today.
Okay. You still have the floor.
I got the floor?
You still do.
All right, I'm gonna dance. All right, so here's my thing. So, I mean, as far as the entering and exiting this neighborhood, I mean, as me being on this commission, we've done it once I know of, and it's a huge subdivision that we've done, which is Countryway. Far back, going in there, there's way back there, and it's way back there, and there's no exit out there. So, in my opinion, that scratches that. Second, I mean, where's your husband?
He's deployed.
He's deployed. Okay, so here's my thing with that. And you guys have been here for how long?
Since 2005.
Okay, and so my thing is, and this is just me, okay? For any guy that comes back from the military, okay, that served this country, all right? I feel that it's owed to him. I don't think that he get enough, to be honest with you. I think you could deserve more, to be honest with you, Clark. That's how I feel. But for me, he can go either way when he comes back. He can either go try and have an opportunity to go this way, or he can go the other way and fall. He chose to try to invest his money. Granted, yes, he didn't do his homework. She didn't do her homework. They didn't find out certain things with it, but they came with her and her dad, and now it's a challenge to them to make it work. And that house, to me, looks gorgeous if the remnant's going to look like that. So for me, I'm for it. I'm saying that with confidence that it's going to look good. And I mean, as far as the lay of the land, we've also voted, well, as me being on this commission, we voted for like smaller lots and bigger neighborhoods. And I can point them out for you if you want me to. But as far as me, I'm dancing on this floor. I'm with it. Let's go.
Okay, thank you. Other Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, I want to see the rendition. I have a question for Chris on the housing that we had right there. Because I'm confusing this easement. So Chris, these lots, that lot right there is how big? It's got to be way bigger than 7,500.
It's about 7,900 square feet.
And this lot is 75?
Correct. Because some of the land will be given into the
So
Duke
this
easement.
ain't really to scale then, really it's just a drawing.
No, it's to scale.
And so this easement's here.
Correct. The
We
lighter,
don't give them room here for their green space?
the
To
lighter
make this-
green will be given
This
into
is
the,
75, how big's that?
well, that is 75 with it.
That's with it?
Yes,
The
but-
lighter
So the
green
whole thing
is the lot.
75?
Correct.
All theirs.
With
The
so
dark
you're
green
in the
is the
easement already?
Correct.
Like
Got
the
it.
ones below it.
Got it.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioner Farnsworth.
On these diagrams, I think you said there can be no parking in the street in this area?
Correct.
So they will all have carports or garages or something of that
That is
nature?
correct.
And the house on the end, how's somebody gonna get to it if the road ends in the
It'll-
house before it?
They'll have a driveway off into it. It's what we call a flag lot.
Okay. Okay, so.
Other questions? Commissioner Coleman.
So really, what we're talking about here is to change the zoning to add 4 more houses.
That is correct.
While we ponder on that, let's address
Yeah.
this connectivity issue, right? Because I have a couple of thoughts on the connectivity issue. And right now you have connectivity to the north, right? There's a place there for the future, but I mean, we can't really see it on this diagram, but I believe there's connectivity out to the north. No connectivity. I've got one saying yay, one saying nay.
No, the intention of that is a turnaround.
It's just a turnaround. So there's no connectivity to the north or the east.
Correct.
I mean, I was going to say, I think it's pointless to have it to the north because the mine's right there, right? I guess my question about to the east, I'm kind of conflicted, right? Our knee-jerk reaction has always been to have connectivity because we can't predict the future and we want everything to be connected, right? We want people to be able to get in and out. I've heard the residents, though, talking about they don't want a whole bunch of people coming in and out. Now, I'm not sure that moving from 8 to 12 is apocalypse turning into California, but I take the principle, right? And I think that one of the concerns about the connectivity to the east would be, well, what happens if another neighborhood comes in and wants 500 and they want to use that as their way in and out? So I sort of have two thoughts. One, we could, to the neighborhood, say we won't put a connection there. That way, this would be the last houses that go in. I think if I was the neighborhood, and I'm not sure who said it, I might be advocating for that eastern connection because there may come a time where it's quicker for folks in the back of Newberry Oaks to get out by going that way. And Eden's Garden might be the one saying, all these Newberry Oaks people driving through our neighborhood, right? And I guess I think part of the reason why we're here is because I think this was intended to be the last phase of Newberry Oaks and it's being named Eden's Garden. And so people don't feel like this is the same. If this was the last phase of Newberry Oaks, it'd just be 12 more houses, right, in Newberry Oaks. But it's got a different name so people are perceiving this as this is another neighborhood tacked on behind. But when I look at Newberry Oaks, I see a lot of cul-de-sac roads that have 12 to 16 houses that are just kind of coming in and out, that they don't have another exit back to that main road. When I look at all of our neighborhoods, I see those kinds of configurations where you go down to a cul-de-sac and you have to turn around and you have to come back out. So let's talk about that. I mean, from your engineering perspective, why, I mean, you heard at the last meeting, the connectivity to the east was something the commission wanted and the neighborhood wanted. Why is it not there? And if we put the connection there and there are more houses to the northwest, could we get closer to the 10,000 square foot?
So I guess two questions there.
There are two.
The latter question would be no, because no matter how you orient.
The north part, no more way to get more up there. Okay.
Because of stormwater needs, roadway, right-of-way widths, and then the minimum lot square footage. Now, as far as the connectivity to the east, you have to look at from a standing point of development and then going forward. We looked at that internally with our own planner as well as our engineering staff, and then had discussions with city staff. And from a connectivity standpoint, having this development, Newberry Oaks or Eden's Garden, connect to the east, there would be no relief from the residents of Newberry Oak going to the east to come out. Because they're still both going to come into the same entrance, well, close to the same entrance on Newberry Road. Human nature is you want to take the fastest route, plus you're routine oriented. So if, depending on the type of a development that happens to the east, whether it's residential, commercial, that will dictate what happens to the connection for Newberry Oaks. So if it's a commercial development, you would like to alleviate cars from hopping onto Newberry Road, but then you don't want other developments or other residents trying to use the roads within Newberry Oaks to get to commercial. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there. Now, from the residential standpoint, if the property to the east gets developed, then more traffic Well, actually, since most of Newberry residents work in Gainesville, most of the traffic just naturally moves down to Newberry Road and then east. So whether there's a connection to the east or not, residents are still going to go from north to south, not east to west.
Okay, and if the commission says we want that connectivity there, what does that, in this current rendering, does that eliminate one lot or two?
It will most likely eliminate two because of stormwater needs, and then you have to have room for the public right of way.
And if they wanted the connectivity, it could be the same way that connectivity is right now, right? It's not that the commission would have to say to you that we want you to pave the road there. It could just be a grass easement that if that connectivity happened in the future, you could tie into it. So they're not saying an undue financial burden in terms of paving and guttering and curbing and all those kinds of things. It's just leave us an easement just the way that easement was left to have a way to get into this, to access this section.
So,
right?
Well, yes and no. If you want interconnectivity to the east, the developer would build the road to the property line for future connectivity, because somebody has to come in, if, in your example of leaving a grass space, somebody would have to come in and build that road. You don't typically want to leave that burden on to the city to build that roadway connection.
So the grass easement today was because Weisman was the developer and he was paying and it was all under him. Is that, but since he's out of it?
You're talking about the easement.
Because right now it's just grass.
Yes, because.
So it's classified as a road.
Hang on one second, sir.
So because that parcel is a different parcel, by state statute, every parcel has to have legal access to a public right of way. So that's why that easement was left, because that is the state mandated access to the property. You can't landlock parcels in Florida. So that's why.
But he didn't have to pave to this parcel because it was all under one.
Because he owned it all.
I take your point, leaving it grass, then you're done, then somebody else comes in and now you got this little section, you know, right? Okay, back to the commission, Commissioner Clark.
Mr. Mayor, so you got this easement going over into the subdivision. Why can't we have an easement right through the Duke power line going out of it?
Duke only allows you to cross their easement in perpendicular angles.
Going in and out?
Yes. So utilities, roadways, you have to cross their easement at 90 degrees.
Other commission
We're trying to
questions?
find an angle with this. It's tough.
Yeah. Other commission questions? Commissioner Martin, you look like you're forming a question. You want?
You always just like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing's a little bit of a mess. I feel like a referee trying to decide between my two children. And, you know, I have kids that play together with all these parties. I've had kids work for me who are have parents in this area. I'm not really crazy about having any houses built back there because of the mines. Because regardless of how much due diligence we try to impose on the seller to the buyer about, hey, there's a mine there, your house gets shaken, it doesn't matter. They're still gonna call us, and the mine's not even within the jurisdiction of the city, so we have administrative expenses, fielding the phone calls, trying to redirect it. They're always pissed off at us because they feel like we're giving them the runaround. As some sort of concession, I'd like to try to keep it at the 10,000 square feet. And it's kind of a concession in my head because I really don't want to put anything in there, to be honest. But, you know, the Lancasters are members of this community. They've been members of this community and the church community, as well as everybody in Newberry Oaks. So in the spirit of trying to compromise, even within myself, not wanting anything back there because of the whole mine issue, I mean, if we can see something that's at 10,000 to keep that consistent, at least that gets her some houses in my head, tries to make the residents of the Oaks happy. I know you're not gonna make as much money as you had hoped potentially on this project. And the connectivity thing, even projecting myself, I'm probably not gonna be sitting here, but, to the east with the Evans, unless the mine shuts down at that point in the future when that property starts looking like it's gonna develop, we're gonna be right back here with the same, or I would at least be back here with the same headache of the mine interference and all that sort of thing. So that's the verbal version of what's going on in my head right now.
And I just want to remind, because I know in a small town, we end up kind of getting informal and talking like this, but we are in a quasi-judicial.
Sure.
We do need to listen to the experts of record. And to the mining issue, we wouldn't be having this conversation if this was new, right? Because this board has already said, we're not approving any more new neighborhoods. This is a parcel that already has zoning rights, so we have to take that into consideration. They already have the right to do this. Now we're just trying to figure out a way to make it, where everybody can be happy and comfortable with the product. So are we done with questions? Are we ready to listen to final arguments? Anybody else have any more questions? So just to reiterate, if we want the connection, then by default, you'd go to 10, but even those 10 would still be 7,500 square foot houses?
That's correct.
7,500 square foot lots.
Yes.
Right, because you put that in, right?
Correct.
So you get 10, but they'd still miss the 10,000 square foot lot size if you want the connection.
That is correct.
And staff, we haven't done the math because we're not the applicant here. We're just judging whether or not it would fit on how many houses could actually go there. We're accepting the 8 number from the applicant that they could move forward. And at that number, none of this has to happen. They just start moving dirt and building houses. You can just give me a head nod, right?
You have to plat the property still.
Plat.
But that's a ministerial process and doesn't require much judgment.
Okay, so his answer was not in the microphone. They'd still have to plat the process, which is where you get capacity in the sewer, right? Once you come for plat, then we decide whether our sewer system has capacity, and then you buy your entrance into the capacity with the connection fees when you build a new house. So 8, but at 8, we get the connection. At 8 houses, we could probably get to 10,000 foot with the connection. At 10 houses with the connection, we're at 75.
Correct.
But with that 8 and the connection, you don't think we could still get to 10,000?
No, I do not.
Seems like 2 more lots would get you.
I wrote down 8.
Well, no. I'm asking about the connection. The connection. If we want connectivity to the east,
okay.
right? They could go in and build 8 houses right now, no connection to the east. They just come into Little Red Schoolhouse to do the platting, right? So what we're talking about here is, do we make sure they have connection to the east? Are we willing to say we don't want the connection to the east, to tell the neighbors these 8 or 10 or 12 houses will be the last houses coming through the neighborhood, right? Those are the kinds of things, and if there's no more questions, I'll ask the attorney. Question.
Can I ask,
This is the time. Ask the questions.
for one of the audience that had a statement, Mr. Evans?
Yes. Bring anybody participating is now
Yeah, Mr.
subject
Evans,
to
let me ask,
cross-examination.
since we're all sitting here.
Come on down.
Yeah.
Come on down.
You gotta walk backwards though.
So, Mr. Evans, you lived there all your life, or for a long period of time?
For a long
You've lived, I know you've lived there a long time.
Yes, sir.
And so I got an engineer who says there's 4.1 acres according to all the surveys. Our building department's roughly at 3.6, and you're at 2.1. Where is the disparity in that being?
Here's how I come up with the two. You got to clear up the confusion. Okay, what's actually going to be houses and yards out of whatever they're saying, 4 acres. You got to include roads, retention ponds, sidewalks, setbacks, etc. So there's only going to be about 2 acres that are actual lots that are being built
That's
on.
where I got
That's
you.
how I came up with that number. So they're going to cram 12, and 15 came from Mrs. Lancaster. Whether it's 10 or 12, you got basically a little over 2 acres, 2.1 or 2.4, whatever it is, that you're going to cram in 12 houses into. And I think that's what everybody's complaining about, is they don't want to see that kind of density. I mean, you can spin it around any way you want to.
Hang on one second, 'cause I gotta be honest, I'm really uncomfortable here.
Okay.
Because in a quasi judicial, you guys need to be making your decisions on evidence based on experts. And I know that Mr. Evans is a very smart man. I taught both his
Well,
kids.
that's why I want to ask it though, just for
But-
clarification on.
Right, but we have to take by experts.
We got, Chris can come back.
They used the 2.4.
Right.
So
no. Hang on one second.
Okay.
But everybody, please, because I don't want to get anybody in trouble here, right?
No.
And you guys in the neighborhood really don't want to get this process in trouble, because then that opens the door for them to say we were not treated fairly here.
Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
And then everything changes at that point, right? The way that he is calculating and the way that we calculate it is the same way that we calculate it for everybody else. So I understand your calculation, sir, but to have comparison fairness, that 4 and 3.6, which our staff has now agreed with the 4, that's how we calculate it for everybody else. He's using a different methodology.
He's saying what's left over, Mayor.
Yeah, but
I understand
in this
what he was
process
going
right
at.
here, we got to use the same
Understood.
methodology. So
Understood.
that's what we
I
got
was
to
just
do.
explaining how I came up
Right.
with my
Yes.
2.1 acres.
Okay, but
That was
our
it.
experts, both sides agree 4. That's what we got to base our factor on, and that's the same methodology that was used to break down Newberry Oaks.
That's
What's- Yeah, practical and what's.
But survey wise, Chris had true 4 acres of buildable land.
Right.
So,
Prior-
Mr. Mayor, if you take that kind of comparison, you got to remember, if Newberry Oaks is 2.8, we're proposing 2.9. So if you're saying that Eden's Garden for the house is only 2 acres, then you need to take out ponds, roads, backyards, whatever you want to make an apples to apples comparison of that. So Newberry Oaks, even though it's 2.8, if you take all those out, it's probably roughly, I would say, 5 to 6 units per acre. It'd be the same comparison as Eden's Garden. But we're talking about developable land, which includes roadways, ponds, and the actual lots. So we are comparing apples to apples numbers between the developments. We're not just looking at individual lots, because that number is skewed and is never looked at that way in the development community.
Okay. So glad we got that straightened out, right? We want to be fair, right? Whatever methodology we're taking to one, we want to take it to the other, right? Any more questions from the dais? Okay, well, Chris, you're there. Why don't we give you the first final argument?
Yes, one thing I want to just bring up is I know everybody keeps talking about how the Lancasters should have done their due diligence. They did do that. They had multiple conversations with city staff. City staff said, we want this developed. You should rezone it to get a higher density to make it feasible. There is profitability and then there's feasibility. If this is reduced below the 12, the project is not feasible, will not go forward. So in her discussions with staff before purchasing the property, staff had advised her that yes, to make it feasible, the density needs to, or the number of lots needs to be increased, and we will support that. And so I know there's a lot of talks about she didn't do her due diligence, Mr. Lancaster didn't do his due diligence, but they did. They had those conversations before purchasing the property. So they were going under the impression that with city staff support, then they could achieve the goal of making the project feasible. So there's profitability and then there's feasibility. I know they go hand in hand, but you have to have one first, because to make the project feasible, she needs the 12 lots. Profitability will wrap into construction costs, the recession. There's a whole bunch of different avenues where it could seem that the project's feasible now, but 2 years from now, who knows what goes on, which makes the project not actually profitable. So there's actually a differentiation between those two of being feasible and profitable. But again, I know we're talking about trying to make this development blend with the surrounding developments. And with staff, we feel we are, because the actual intensity is pretty basically identical between Newberry Oaks and this subdivision. And so don't know why Mr. Weisman didn't build it. Brian mentioned that he knew he would have to rezone it. He probably didn't want to just deal with it. Maybe if we would have called this Newberry Oaks Phase 10, the name wouldn't have created many issues. But this is a solely separate parcel. And then there's many examples of larger lots. And these will actually be, aside from the 10,000 square foot lots, these will actually be a larger set of lots through many of the other developments that have come through before the board. So, but that's all we have.
Okay, thank you, sir. Staff, would you like to make a final argument? No? Okay. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise decision-making bodies applicable law and factual findings must be made to approve or deny the decision?
It is the substantial and competent evidence standard, which, as you said just a little while ago, is based upon opinion testimony from the experts, people with letters after the name, such as our land planners, AICP planners, engineers, that sort of thing.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll enter into deliberations. And I just to reiterate, the question before us in this quasi-judicial procedure is, will Eden's Garden at 7,500 square feet, right, blend in with the characteristic of Newberry Oaks in such a way that you wouldn't really know the difference between Newberry Oaks and Eden's Garden, right? It's just, it's a zoning category change. I've heard a lot of things here tonight. I appreciate Commissioner Mazon's sentiment about veterans, but that doesn't have any bearing on this here tonight. I appreciate folks, talking about density and uncontrolled growth. I want to remind, we're talking about the difference of 4 houses here, right? So I don't think that this is a good example of uncontrolled growth. I think that we need to bring a little bit of more moderation to this conversation. But at the end of the day, we're looking at a zoning change that would allow 4 more homes than the 8. That's the only thing. You have staff's recommendation, you have the applicant with their expert advice, and I would just throw in that the P&Z approved it based on that eastern connectivity, and you guys, I'm forgetting at which part of this process it was, because this has been an ongoing, you guys also did originally feel more comfortable with that eastern connectivity there as well. So I got to be honest, I don't know that I could tell the difference between a 7,500 square foot lot and a 10,000 square foot lot by the naked eye. I'm less concerned about the difference between 8 and 4 as I am about the connectivity issue, because I think that if this goes, the benefit would actually stand for the neighborhood, existing neighborhood, to have another point in the back to be able to get in and out. But I hear the applicant saying that's kind of a deal breaker too. Well, so I agree with Commissioner Martin. We seem to be just sort of stuck here. For me, I heard the neighborhood say they could build 10 houses, right? We're not okay with that. Now that we've done the math, now it's down to 8 that we could actually get in. So I've got somebody on the record saying they were good with 10, but 10 still can't make it I guess 10 could make it with the eastern connectivity at 7,500 square feet, right? So I feel like a referee here, and I don't want to negotiate up here on the dais. So we keep asking for that eastern connectivity, and it never quite makes it into the application. And we understand the reasons why, right? So commission deliberates. Commissioner Clark.
Well, Mr.
You
Mayor,
reached for the mic first, so
I got it. So I wonder, with hearing the expert testimony from our staff, from an engineer and the people right here, we don't need to table this one more time so we can get some clarifications on this and maybe even see about this eastern connectivity. Is that possible, or is that not a?
It's possible, and I would say.
I'm not saying
if
that's a
East-
motion, I'm just asking
Right,
for now.
if eastern connectivity is going to be,
If that's a deal breaker, then we need to know.
then I would say table it and let them one more time. Commissioner Martin?
Mr. Mayor, parliamentary wise, right now, it's still on the table, and it's not been brought off the table.
Right.
So there would be nothing necessarily that's done from a parliamentary procedure. But Scott's reaching for the microphone also, but I may have stole his thunder.
If you wish to table, it does not require a second. You table it to a date certain in the future.
I mean, I think it's also possible for the commission to put that in as a condition and say, you know, this, we want to see this. I would recommend that because I think the applicant would want to go to staff and say, okay, for the third time running, we've had the P and Z and the commission come back to this eastern connectivity. You got to make it work with the eastern connectivity. If you can make it work with the connectivity, then come back to us. And I guess I am getting a little bit frustrated because that's two boards in 3 different times where it's come down to the connectivity issue, and we keep talking about this application without it. So this is third time's the charm. This is the best presentation we've gotten here in terms of clarification of numbers and some renderings and those kinds of things. But to me, that eastern connectivity, if we didn't have that, I'm not sure this would have passed P and Z, because the P and Z, that was, you know, we had compromised at that moment. Nobody was talking about density. People were talking about duplexes and townhomes. We got rid of those. It went forward on 16 houses and connection, right? Without that connection part, I'm not sure we'd have now that's me hypothetically looking in the past, but the P and Z approved it with the recommendation of the connection. We talked about the connection at the first commission meeting, right? So if y'all are in the same headspace that I am in, it's not necessarily the development that we're worried about, it's the connection. Then I agree with Commissioner Clark. Table it to a time certain with that conversation, and then the engineer knows and our staff know this is the bar you got to hit, right? Show us how you're going to make this work with leaving that connection open, and then we're ready to have a conversation.
How many houses did the P&T
16.
with the connection?
16 with the connection, but they were 5,000 square foot lots, so they were much smaller. And I was joking earlier about being hot, but now I actually am hot. So hit like a degree. I'm sorry, Miss Lopez Peggy. I apologize. Yeah. Commissioner Coleman's about to pass out over there, right? Commissioner Farnsworth?
So are we okay with the 12 houses?
Well, I mean, I
hate to see them come back with.
I mean, that's a good point, right?
With another.
They figure out how to make the connection, and then it's still the 12 houses, right?
Right. I just want to be sure.
So let's give them some
all
feedback.
the ducks in the row before we.
Is everybody in wanting to see that eastern connection? Is that a line that we feel is important to connect it to the east? I heard Commissioner Martin say he was kind of, on it. Was that right? Yeah? Did I get summary? Yeah?
I would like to try to get the connector in there, yes.
I mean, it's just always been a principle of this board that we don't cut the future commission's legs out from under them, right? We leave possibilities open so that, nothing may ever happen there, right? And it may never go, but it also may be a great way for the back half of that neighborhood to get out, and they don't have to come down, right, to Newberry Road. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't really know. I asked the guys in the workshop to bring a crystal ball, and they didn't. So I hear one connector is kind of important.
Yes.
I hear, is the connection an important point to everybody? And then we'll go to the 12 houses as, yes, connection is important. I've already heard, Commissioner Maison, you're reaching for the mic. Go ahead.
You know how.
So if they come back with that connection, right, I don't think, they've already said they can't make the connection work with 12 houses, right? So it's gonna be, but I've heard the neighborhood say they're fine with 10, right? So, and he says it's gonna take 2 lots to put in the connector, so that gets them down to 10, right? So I think that's, if I saw an application that had a connector, the 75 square foot lots, in my mind, I can't really visually see a difference between 10,000 and 7,500 square foot, right? Some of those 75 square foot lots look really big, right? But the connection is the important piece. So I would say my feedback is, I'm not necessarily opposed to 75 square foot lots, but I want to see the connection in there, figure out how many houses you can get with leaving that connection. And I feel like I've been pretty consistent on that point about, I want the connection, I want the connection, I want the connection. I've never deviated from that. I've never changed from that. So again, I'm harping on it because I've been so consistent with it, and yet we continue to get applications that show that not there. And I mean that for our staff as well, right? I think that our staff, if they hear that we want that connection, then when they give the recommendation, they should point out, right? We recommend approval. However, we recognize that it's not having the connection, right? That way it draws our attention to something that they've heard us say we want. 7,500 square foot lots with the connector. You think about it.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Clark, you think about that?
Well, let me say this. When you look at this plan that they have, the 7,500 square foot is just gonna be on the survey. When you look at the rest of this property, it's gonna look like 12,000 or 15,000 square foot because of all the green space around them. So the back of the lot, you're not gonna be able to tell where the line is unless somebody puts a fence up. So I'm not really against the housing, but if we're gonna do this to make it right for the future plan, then we need to do it where we are changing the zoning to go to the smaller lot size. We have done that. It ain't the things we wanna do, but there's subdivision with a lot less footprint in it right now. Some that I absolutely disagree with. So these are pretty good size. They're not the 10,000 Newberry Oaks is, but we are here to change some of the zoning to make it a different zoning. So I'm good with that, but we need the connector to go through.
Commissioner Maison.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's okay. So what gets me is when you say we need a connector to go through, right? I sit on this board, we didn't get a connector for another subdivision and a similar, in my opinion, and you can stop me if I'm overstepping my boundaries, but it was never a problem then. So why is it a problem now?
I do want to stop that, right? Because, and I understand, we've heard a lot about precedent and those kinds of things, but in a quasi-judicial, there's really, every single presentation is unique. And every single presentation is different enough where it's really, really hard to say we've set a precedent or we haven't set a precedent. The whole point of a quasi-judicial is that each applicant gets his or her day in court to be heard with their unique situation, right? So, I think that there are certainly, and there are other neighborhoods that have been approved before our time that we would all look back and say that was a mistake, right? I think that we learn through this process just as much as the applicants learn through this process. So, whether there's neighborhoods that didn't get the connectors, I know that in the recent history, right, with a much more professional staff to help guide us, we have we have so many points of connection around town center at this point, right? If anybody comes in anywhere, there's going to be a way to get in and out of there just because we've been coached on better planning practices at this point. And so, that's what we're trying. We're moving forward at this point with the precedents. I don't want to cut you off completely though. Keep on going if you.
We're good. I think we're good. My opinion is I'm cool with the 12 houses without a connector. You guys can do what you want. I would love to see your creativity. That's me.
Commissioner Martin.
I think the only way we get this done is for the existing residents to give up a little bit of the lot size, for us to give up the 10,000 square feet as well. Miss Lancaster, I guess we're looking at, she'd end up having to give up two potential lots there. So we're all giving up something, and we're all putting something into the middle of the table. And I think that's what we're gonna all have to do. So we just bring this back and just put the connector in over here on the eastern end.
Okay, so I think that there's two ways, and I'd be guided by you guys, right? One, this is first reading, so
Yeah.
you can say, we approve
Yeah,
with the connection, right?
yeah.
And then give them time to go and figure out how to make that connection, right? Or we table, and they take this conversation back to the drawing board. Chris uses his super cool tools to figure out, what does it actually mean if I put a roadway in here, right? Do I lose one lot? Do I lose two? Those kinds of things. Commissioner Martin?
Chris, is there anything that we can do on our end for the size of the stormwater or anything like that, or is that, no? Okay.
I thought that the Lancasters and Chris already gave, because we started at 16, 20-something, came down to 16. It seems like, nothing against anyone in here, it seems like they were stuck with the 10. It seems like some of us are stuck with the 10, and we haven't jumped up at least. So then they brought it down to 12, 2 over 10, and we're still sitting there saying, give up more. I'm sorry, that's just me. We could table it, but I felt that they went from 28, 23? To 16?
I don't even want to go back.
Down? Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, from the last meeting, that's how we tabled it. That's why we tabled it, because I was like, 16 is too much. So then they dropped it down to 12.
I mean, my recommendation would be to table it, to give them the opportunity to see if they even want to move forward with those numbers, right? And see if it's one lot or two, right, that they're going to bring back. I mean, at some point, we are going to get down, we're whittling it to the point where it won't really be a feasible project to move forward. So, you know, if we do want to be able to punch a hole out of the back of Newberry Oaks eventually and get, in my mind, that's kind of an incentive to figure out how to get this thing done, because Newberry Oaks is a deep subdivision, right? It takes a while to get back there. So to have a way to get out the east side eventually one day and make your way either to Newberry Road or to 202 on the other side, right? We've had other presentations where the mines got about 5 more years of life expectancy before they are out of the way. So that's if you know, things slow down, right? Those kinds of things. So hopefully we're coming to an end of that being part of the conversation. But it seems to me, but again, I'd be guided by the applicant. If she would prefer, move it forward under those conditions, and y'all see if you want to bring it back, or if you want to table it and take it out, right? You want to ask the commission for one of those or the other to move forward?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So we would request if the roadway is a concern, that would just be a condition on approval. And because we still have to come back with the second reading, and we can provide more graphics and whatever else the commission would like. But our preference would be, if that is a concern, then we'd like to go ahead and make that a condition instead of table it.
Okay, so the motion would be approval with the inclusion of connectivity to the east, and then that would give them the opportunity to come back and see if they can figure out. I mean, it seems to me like we're not going below 7,500 square feet, right? So that would, they know the parameters upon which you guys have had this conversation. They can go back and watch all the tape, but that would allow them, and they have the right to ask for that to be a slower process, right? So we let the applicants try to come back, you know, within 2 or 3 weeks, right? Or give them a little bit more time if they need it. And then if they, on second reading, if they're not able to come in and make that work, right, then you guys would be able to still have the same conversation of, well, you only made it work by cramming them in, that's not gonna be approved, those kinds of things, right? So approved on first reading just keeps it going, but on the condition that they provide connectivity to the east, right? Does anyone want to make that motion? Or does anybody have any questions about that motion?
Something about it. So on the property to the east and south of, we got two parcels, the Evans on the back piece? Is that correct, Mr. Evans? And then who owns the one in front of you?
That's a proposed development, WEC.
So we have a stub out right there on that, development, which could, sir?
Hang on one second.
Hang on, hang
We're
on.
still in
Hang on, hang on.
quasi-judicial, so.
So
you
what
can
I'm
ask
saying,
him
Mr.
questions,
Mayor-
But you gotta come up here to answer.
Mr. Mayor, what I'm saying is, if this one here is there something we could all look at? And if this is developed and Mr. Evans is developed, these two can connect all the way to the rear if we didn't put a stub out in the parcel we're talking about tonight.
I think that's why you want that connection, right? Because then it can go to the Evans, it can come down
And
to
come straight down?
Come straight down, right? Without that connection, then that neighborhood would have to go around through.
Around.
And then come out, right? So if you put that connection there, then every single development that's on the books.
We'll have
right,
access to those two
Will
parcels.
have access points, right? It doesn't create a strain, like, why do I have to go out and around from here and get to there, right? That doesn't make, who did this, right?
Yep.
That kind of thing. I have those thoughts in my head whenever I drive around, right? Who did this, right? Yeah. Commissioner Coleman?
I think with it being able to go out a different direction from there, I think that's the game changer right there. Will they immediately be able to use that to be able to get out? There's the problem.
Yeah, it's just future
I
planning.
mean, if, the horse farm, right, the horse farm might not sell and, no subdivision there. Okay.
I mean, to me, the connection, again, may never be used.
Yeah.
But the Evans are right. If you don't put it in, you can never go back and tear somebody's house down and say, I'm gonna put a road in here. So it is it's now or never, right? And, well, he addressed you, so I'm gonna let that happen, right? So but you gotta come up here to answer it. But because he asked you a question, I'll allow it.
Future development is happening all around us. There's no way we're not gonna get caught up in it, okay? I mean, if we could go back in time and I could erase all those houses, no offense, but we would have it all open. But there's no way that you aren't gonna have, we're the last corner, okay? We do not wanna develop our land, but it's gonna get sucked up in it. And even if it's my kids or something happens to me and my wife has to sell the farm, that connectivity would go to WEEC. Our land also connects to the Davises, which is the big plans for the Ag Tech Park. It would allow fingers of exit and entrance. If you don't do that now, it's just gonna it's gonna put a big wall there and it's gonna keep people from being able to get out and alleviate that potential for the traffic. It's not gonna make that much difference to us or our property value. It really isn't when you look at it with what's coming in from the other direction. But I think it is, in talking with Mike New, his dream, his foresight was he'd like to see it all connected all the way out to the north in a meeting. And so I think that's, I can't answer it better than that, I don't think. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Okay.
Me and Mark, we loaded many watermelons out of where they're living at right now. We pitched a bunch of them. I don't know about Monty. I think Monty always had the timer in his hand.
I think I might have stole a few watermelons out of that field when I was out. Sampled the watermelons. Chris?
Mr. Mayor, if we could, I would request that the planning staff come up and give their opinion on roadway connectivity. I appreciate Mr. Evans coming up and giving his, but as the attorney said, I mean, the only ones who can inform the board of what the city's staff and vision is for the city is the actual city staff. If Mr. Mike New was here, he'd be able to help that, but I think it would be beneficial for the board to hear from the actual staff and their planning for the future, not for not from a local resident who isn't involved in that information.
I
'Cause
think
again,
that's a good
this-
question.
It's a quasi-judicial
Right? I
meeting.
think it's a fair ask. The only thing I want to correct is that the people responsible for the vision of the future are these 5 right here, not even me. I don't have a vote.
Correct.
These 5 here. So they're responsible for the vision as told by the people who vote them into office, right? But I think it is a good and fair to say to JP or Brian, if JP wants to push the buck, because we have now got 3 presentations where staff has recommended approval without that eastern connection, even when boards have asked for it, right? So explain to us what's in y'all's mind about why that hasn't been something that you've said to them, hey, the P&Z said connect it, right? Why do we keep recommending approval without that eastern connection?
Oh, certainly. So thank you. That eastern connection does provide connection to the Evans property. The Evans property already does have an easement that connects it down to the WEC or WEC property, as well as Newberry Road on the east side. This connection and the development of their property, as they stated, is not something that's going to happen anytime in the near future. The only use of any sort of connection there would be for horse trucks and other, equestrian-related traffic that would be going through this proposed planned residential development and Newberry Oaks for a request that the residents have come to the podium and spoken about the concern over existing residential traffic within the Newberry Oaks neighborhood. So ultimately, we don't make the design decisions. They are providing the connectivity as required in the subdivision regulations. There could be connection to the east in the future. The benefit of that is hard to see currently. As it stands, that may be a 50 or 75-year plan, and without a clear road network map being developed for the city, it's hard to tell whether that development or that connectivity would be warranted at this time. As it stands, it serves to provide an egress for equestrian trucks, and that is probably not something that the residents would like at this time.
Let me ask you this, JP. Hang on, please, sir. If we had the connectivity, you could still stipulate that it's a private road from the neighborhood and the equestrian trucks couldn't go through until they open it up on the other side. We could, I mean, I take that concern, and I think that's a nice concern for the neighborhood, right? That, hey, you guys don't want people driving through. We don't want the Evans bringing, agricultural things through the neighborhood.
Yeah.
But that seems like a clause, right, that you put in there.
But potentially, I mean, it becomes a right-of-way, it becomes a travel way, and a travel way is, unless they gate that road, it's a travel way.
Okay. All right. Who asked that question? Everybody? Are you good? Okay, so the idea on the floor, right? Make a motion for approval contingent on eastern connectivity, right? And then allow the applicant to come back and see if they can make that work or not work. Or I'm willing to entertain a different idea. If we have one idea to just table it, the applicant has said, put that as a condition in there, give us the opportunity to see if we can make that work.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to move to approve with the condition.
Of eastern connectivity. I have a motion to approve on the condition that they can figure out the eastern connectivity. Do I hear a second for that motion? I have a second from Commissioner Martin. Okay, questions or comments on the motion floor from the dais? Okay, that opens it up back to the public. Even if you got up and spoke before, you have the right to get up and speak again. The idea right now, the motion on the floor is to approve on first reading, right, with the requirement of connectivity to the east, right? That gives the applicant the opportunity to go back and see if they can make the numbers work and the lot size and all those kinds of things and have another day in court. Does anyone have thoughts of that? Come on down again, sir. It's a brand new plan.
This is no common access that we would use to our farm, okay? There wouldn't be, it's it's a small horse farm anyway. There would not be trailers and trucks of any kind going through there.
Hang on, I'm not sure your microphone's on. Can you repeat that for the record?
Yes, what I'm saying is this isn't an access that we would use to our farm. We are looking at the future development and the vision that when we've talked to staff, and they may have a different idea now looking at this, but when we've talked to them, if you don't do this now, that connectivity is never going to happen. And so it's a matter of options, if you ask me. If you don't leave your options open, you're never going to be able to alleviate this traffic. And with the visions you guys have with the Ag Tech Park, with WEEC being part of that Ag Tech Park, which connects to our property, I don't want you guys to think that we're trying to get a connection there. We wouldn't even use it. It can be a right-of-way on grass with any stipulation you want. It could be hooked up later, but the city's going to benefit from it. They really are. And that's, a stub out to the property line. And I understand that what they're saying is that somebody's going to have to bear the burden to build that road. But that's kind of the cost of doing business for a developer and it's always been the city's policy. I can tell you that from having a lot of meetings with Mike and Brian. So with that said, I don't know. I don't want you guys to think we're trying to get another way into our property. We would never use it, okay? And in 50 to 75 years, no. I mean, the way things are growing around here, I look back 10 years ago, and my gosh, we're getting smothered out, and we're gonna having the option to having us connected to what they're doing now, and then that connectivity to be able to go to what's already in the works. That's what we're trying to bring that up for. Okay.
And I think it's worth and fair noting that the Evans have 2 or 3 other points on their property. So this would be a 3rd or 4th point. So I can understand why it may seem like this has been a self-serving argument about connectivity. I don't see it as a self-serving argument at all. You guys have other points. I see this as us responding to what our planners have trained us to do over and over again. So, hang on, we're at public comment right now, so we'll have final. Other public comments. Come on down, ma'am.
Connie Clark. In other discussions, you were talking about the square footage of the lot being 7,500 feet. You did not make that in your motion. Is that going to be part of that motion? The size of the lot?
The application in front of us is for 7,500 square foot lots.
Okay.
Right, so it got approved as presented with the exception that they have to figure out that eastern connectivity.
So the square footage of the lot stays the same, they just need the connection to the
Correct.
east? Okay, I just
Correct.
wanted that clarification.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Come on down, sir.
Real quick.
Come on to.
All I'm hearing is 7,500 square foot lots. That's all I'm hearing. 10,000 square foot lot, 7,500 square foot lot. How big of houses are we putting on there? We're going to put 1,200 square feet homes?
And I'll answer that because he
Or-
answered it before, right?
Well, he said 12 to
So,
2,500.
At this point in the process, all we're thinking about is the zoning package. There'll be another process where we get to sit through more meetings. And at that point, we get a greater level of specificity. So right now, we're just talking about zoning,
Okay,
right?
that's
Later
clear.
on, and your name again, sir, was?
Pat Wright.
Pat Wright. Come on down, ma'am.
Thank you. Jessica Carey. So question regarding the feasibility that was mentioned. Forgive me, I forgot your name, sir. The planner mentioned that if there was not 12 homes built, that it would not become feasible. And the current regulations for the property zoning is 10 homes. And if you make it with this connectivity clause as a requirement of this new rezoning, even at 7,500 square footage aside, wouldn't that make it go under the feasibility and then this vote would be mute?
That's not our problem to figure out.
Okay, I just want to make sure if that's the clarification.
That's their problem with
So I
their
just want to make
tool.
sure I'm clarifying
Right.
is like, for their feasibility minimum is 12 homes. So even if you add this clause, it would be with less than those 10 it's somewhere between 10 and 12 homes. I just want clarification on that.
Unless they get more creative, right? Like, every time we put a problem in front of Chris, he figures out a way to solve it. So,
Yes, sir.
challenge accepted, right? Other public comment? Okay, going once, twice. I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call vote. Commissioner Maison?
Yeah.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes.
Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously, 5-0. Thank you all for your patience and your decorum as we work through that. I'm sure it was emotional for everybody on both sides, and hopefully we will work to a resolution that we can all live with. That's going to take us to item 10 on tonight's published agenda. This is the final adoption of the fire assessment rates for fiscal year 2023, Resolution 2022-43. Mr. Attorney, would you please read that resolution into the record?
Yes, sir. This is a resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to the provision of fire rescue services, facilities, and programs within the City of Newberry, Florida, establishing the rate of assessment, reimposing fire rescue assessments against assessed property located in the City of Newberry for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2022, approving the assessment roll, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is pass Resolution 2022-43 as read by title only.
Thank you, sir. Dallas, take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. Tonight is your final adoption of the fire assessment for your fiscal year 2023 budget. As a reminder, staff does not propose a rate increase in the fire assessment, so the resolution presented to you tonight is a continuation of the assessments from last year. That is a residential rate of $195 per residential dwelling unit. As a reminder, the fire assessment can only be spent on responding to fire, non-medical emergencies, and maintaining readiness to respond. Appropriate notice was put in the newspaper as well as mailed to all affected property owners.
Thank you, sir. And remembering that our balanced budget is predicated on each piece of the budget, do I have a motion? I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, second from Commissioner Clark. Any comments, questions, motion floor from the dais? Public comments or questions on motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and that takes us to comments. Neither from either Assistant City Manager?
I have one comment, Mr. Mayor. The Alachua County Visit Gainesville Tourism Council is hosting a agritourism conference for all county residents and businesses interested in learning more about agritourism. That will be on Thursday, September 22nd from 11 to 3 p.m. at the IFAS Extension Agency right here in Newberry. I believe information has been put on our website and sent out to all of you, if anybody's interested.
Very cool. Thank you, sir. Mr. Attorney?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk?
Just want to wish Commissioner Coleman an early happy birthday tomorrow.
All right. 45.
No, 39.
39. You know, I heard an interesting stat. The person who racks up the most birthdays lives the longest. There you go.
And look, I was born.
What year?
I was born August 23rd, 1964.
He's a baby?
At 8:01 p.m.
Wow.
Barbara Eden was born August 23rd before me at 8:01 p.m.
Who's Barbara Eden?
I Dream of
Jeannie.
I Dream of Jeannie. Hey, I watched that when I was a little tyke.
He's like, who's that?
And I can remember his birthday because it's my anniversary. So it's a no-brainer.
There you go. There you go. All right. Good. Commissioner Coleman, you got any comments?
No, well, tonight, I just want to, my feelings about tonight. That was very, on both sides. It didn't get out of hand. I wish all the meetings I mean, it's controversial, but I really could see where people are wanting to work together to hopefully make this a good solution for both parties. So I think that went actually pretty well, so that's it.
I agree. Commissioner Clark?
Happy anniversary, happy birthday, and God bless America.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Happy anniversary, happy birthday. Yeah, God bless America. I was wondering if the city could put signs up in the Newberry Hills and the entrances that says this is a mining, blasting area, the quality of life will be affected. And have that so the people that go in there to buy houses can see that, and then once they buy a house 1 month later, they're not calling us complaining about the blasting, because I don't know if that could be done or not, but I think it'd give us a way out of fielding these complaints.
I mean, I don't know if it can be done or not, but I will tell you about the mines. It's not every house in the I've sat in more people's living rooms talking about the mines, and your house could shake, and you swear it's an earthquake, and your house right next to it didn't feel a thing.
Our house up near the post office used to shake whenever.
Yeah.
Back in.
So I don't know that it'd be fair to the whole neighborhood to say, this neighborhood is affected by mines, because there's lots of houses that never experience anything. Right? But it is an interesting.
The people aren't home, but when the blasting.
Yeah, it is an interesting idea. Sleep on that one. Anything else, Commissioner Martin? No, Commissioner Martin.
I don't know if you are aware, there's an election tomorrow. I encourage everybody to go vote. If you are interested in the candidates, please check them out. I have plenty of information on my Facebook pages. I know about it. School's all obviously underway. I'm asking and just everybody try to be generous as possible with the school programs. I know a lot of the programs tend to go to the same businesses and the same people. Always trying to fund different things as much as possible, and we got to love on our kids and do what we can for our kids. Happy anniversary, Judy, and happy early birthday to you, Ray.
Just to follow up on Commissioner Martin, the Alachua County Equestrian Center is the new voting location for if you live on south of Newberry Road, you go to 4, which is Canterbury. If you live north of Newberry Road, you're going to come to the municipal building.
So all those people that live in that area have to come all the way to the municipal building. But Alachua County Equestrian has 2 or 3 ways to get in and out, right? The Methodist Church only had the one. We're a pretty good distance away from the light, right? The Methodist Church, when you backed up on the road, you're right there by the light. So much better parking.
You didn't have to go make a U-turn though.
Right. So there's going to be some pits and pros and cons, but when you get there, you'll be able to park and you'll be able to get back out. You will have to go back and forth. Remember, 7 to 7, right? So if the U-turn doesn't work for you early in the morning, hit it on the way home, right? Commissioner.
The liquor store, rather than the donuts?
Yeah. Commissioner Bazant, your comments?
Yes, real quick. Let's see if I can make this real quick. So with MLK, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, they'll have my time tutoring from 4 to 5:30. Monday and Thursday, they have senior arts class from 10 a.m. to 12. And then they have elder care from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m.
So I guess caretakers can get a break.
Okay. And then I also have an update from downtown Main Street. They have a Newberry Main Street presents the first annual Scarecrow Road. Yeah, right? So this is where businesses, let me see if I get this right, for $25, get a group, businesses can sponsor a light downtown, light pole, and you get to decorate it. And then they'll have a drawing, and then we'll figure out when they're gonna do that at, upcoming, and I'll update you guys on that. But then they also have Follow Me to the Newberry Firehouse Gallery, the Ginger Man Show, okay? That's gonna be September 9th, 2022, obviously, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. Now, that's actually kicking into what we have planned for, Christmas. Okay, that's where I see you looking at me over here, which is going to be a gingerbread theme. That's right. You like gingerbread?
Does that go with elves?
Oh, this guy.
I want to jump in on this because
Jump in on it real quick.
I have to thank the Newberry Main Street. They have taken up this mantle of making Christmas Newberry the Christmas capital of Alachua County. Incredibly, financially and in terms of sweat equity, they are 100% in. So they're going to work with the businesses up and down to turn all the storefronts into gingerbread houses. And I want to thank the chamber also. They're working with us. We're going to have a gingerbread contest in the municipal building one night. I mean, the things that Main Street has done recently to get behind y'all's vision is fantastic, right? I just wanted to say thank you. So thanks for bringing all that up.
You're welcome. And they're working on the Fall Festival, November 19th. Okay, you've been staring at me, so I know you're waiting on this one.
Desperate.
Okay, you waiting on this one? You ready for this one? Okay, I got two. So what did the small mountain...
You have to wait for one after BOA. We have to spread them out. One here.
Okay,
one
I got it.
there.
There you go. So what did the small mountain say to the big mountain? Hi, Cliff.
I steal those in class every day.
I thought that was pretty good. Hi, Cliff.
Is that all you got, Commissioner Ray? I don't know that you guys noticed my shirt here tonight.
You have a shirt on.
I kind of hit it. I didn't really celebrate it, but I want to thank Designs by Sierra. You can find that company on Facebook. Wonderful turnaround rates, right? Very creative, and I know it's a yard of the month. It's a little thing, but it's little things in life that we enjoy.
For it for months. Every day on Facebook, he begged for this award.
I didn't even know the award was out there. I don't know what Miss Peggy's talking about. I had never heard of it before. They just showed up one day and said, beautiful yard, right? On a more serious note, I did want to recognize the passing of Jimbo Nipper. Jimbo's a longtime Newberry employee, and we have reached out to the family to see when would be the appropriate time to bring them in, offer a proclamation, some sort of recognition of his service to the city of Newberry. Clearly, right now they're in the midst of their grief, so we want them to dictate that timeline, but we are not in any way ignoring that grief or his loss for the community. We will bring them in when their family lets us know that they're ready for it. But and in the meantime, Miss Judy and her office are working on writing up a proclamation and getting a list of all those historical things that he was a part of helping us build here in the city. So that does it for my comments. Any public comment? Seeing none, we are adjourned. 3-minute break, and then we're going to reconvene the BOA.
I didn't know that well because I was Hey, Scotty boy.
He's in the bathroom.
We don't need him to tell.
Hey, boo boo.
You put a speaker in the bathroom so you hear the.
Do you remember the time we,
Yeah, where were you?
He said, I say a hell boy. All right, here we go. Welcome to the Board of Adjustment meeting for August the 22nd at 10:18 PM. Can I get an approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
I got a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Mazon. Any comments? Any public comments? All in favor? Aye. It passes unanimously. We're going into public hearings and ordinance.
Are you gonna have approval of agenda or
Consent agenda.
I said approval of the,
Oh, I see.
We just did the.
Yeah.
Of this agenda.
He's just flying through it.
yeah. But then if we're going into public hearings and ordinance, we will be entering a quasi judicial proceeding. So we're entering a quasi judicial procedure. This means that the commission will stop being a legislative body and will become a judicial board, which means that we have to follow certain rules and adhere to different standards of decision-making. The primary rule must follow concerns testimony, and the substantial and competent evidence standard must be met when the judicial board makes a decision. This standard states the following. All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record. Now I ask the city attorney to read in the record the ordinance or the resolution by title.
Before we get into that, we still need to approve the consent agenda.
Oh,
We approved the consent, we didn't approve the agenda.
well, okay.
I thought we approved the agenda.
Well, I said I approve the consent agenda.
Okay, we need.
So I need to approve the agenda. Oh,
Second.
got him. You got him. So, any comments? Any public comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously.
All right.
Now we'll go back.
We're on track now.
Well, you ought to be the mayor. Now I'm going to ask the city attorney to read into the record the ordinance or the resolution by title.
Yes, sir. This is
Mr. Attorney.
Resolution 2022-44, SDP 22-10, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, serving as the Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving an application for site and development plan approval for the construction of approximately 2,400 square feet of commercial building in a PD Plan Development Zoning District and the associated site development pursuant to Section 14.12 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations and located in the square of Country Way on a portion of the Newberry Town Center Plan Development, approximately 8.53 acres within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida, on a portion of parcel number 02544-003-000, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is passed resolution 2022-44 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you, Scott. At this point, I'm going to ask the city clerk to swear in any applicant, staff, and participants requesting to speak.
Please state your name for the record, starting on my left.
John Paul Press, response.
Do you hereby swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, do this one.
Before we begin, we need to disclose any ex parte communications, disclose whether any member physically inspected the property, ex parte communications, or the conversation or transmission of information that may have bearing or influence on any voting members for the decision. Before we start,
No.
Commissioner Majon, Commissioner Martin, Commissioner Farnsworth,
I mean, I've seen the property, I don't know whether that's not considered inspecting it, is it?
no. I have none. Commissioner Coleman?
None.
I will now explain the order of presentation will follow for the quasi judicial for tonight. We'll have a staff overview. We'll have the applicant present the application, no time limit. Staff report and recommendation, no time limit. There's been no third-party interveners. We'll have public comments limited to 3 minutes. The applicant may cross-examine. The party interveners may cross-examine. Staff may cross-examine. Members of the decision-making body through the chair may ask questions of the staff, the applicant, or the participants. Final arguments may be made by the applicant, party interveners, and then staff related solely to the evidence testimony presented at the hearing. The city attorney will advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law and to the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application. Then we'll have deliberations of the application. After deliberations, a vote shall be taken to approve, approval conditions, continue, or deny the application. JP?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, John Paul Perez with Planning and Economic Development. The request being presented to you is a site and development plan request to construct 2,400 square feet of commercial use, known as Building 2B at the square at Newberry Town Center at Countryway. This is a general location map showing you generally where it's located at Newberry Town Center. This is the general location of the building within the site, part of the commercial component. Again, it's approximately 2,400 square feet of commercial use. Inside the building, they'll be providing for bar and seating for an existing restaurant use and possible event space. The building will be connected to the existing building by a breezeway, and that breezeway will be used for providing food service. There's also a little outdoor fire pit and seating area. Also, this proposed building will be closing a potential connection of Southwest 17th Drive with Southwest 247th Way. So on the slide before you now is the proposed building. This is the breezeway connection. This is the potential roadway that's being connected. And as part of staff's conditions, we're asking that they close that stub-out road or connection there to provide additional pedestrian pathway. Now that this will be all kind of, common area for the development, for the commercial component. As such, staff is recommending approval. As long as with staff's condition, the owner shall remove the sub-out street improvements to create a cohesive pedestrian pathway and incorporate additional landscaping into the design, as well as address any outstanding comments from the development application review team. That completes staff's presentation.
Okay, anything from the applicant, Chris? No? That was staff report and recommendation. Public comments? You want to cross-examine? Nobody wants to cross-examine? Members of this decision-making body, do you have any questions for the staff or for the applicant's engineer here?
Yeah. So you said there's a roadway that's going to be closed?
It's not even a staff, it's just an entrance point.
Right. There's on this plan here, you can see on the right side, which is the east side, there's some parking and what looks to be a roadway that's going to connect. On the left side, you can see that 4-point intersection. Those two were connecting at some point in the planning process. As this plan is materialized, that connection's going away. We've checked with fire, it's a non-issue. It's just simply going away and becoming additional usable space for the development.
Okay, I don't recall ever seeing that there, but, okay.
Is that it?
That's on the,
Any final arguments from staff? Chris?
Chris wants to talk more tonight.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, these are all private roads.
Drag racing material. Good. All right, city attorney, will you advise the decision-making body as to the applicable law and the factual findings that must be made to approve or deny the application?
Yes, sir, substantial and competent evidence.
We're going into deliberations. Anybody have anything? Nothing? Okay, we will, we'll take a vote. I'll get a motion to approve.
So moved.
I got a motion from Commissioner Coleman,
Second.
second from Commissioner Farnsworth. All in favor? What? Any more comments, public comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously.
Now you don't have to read all that again.
Right, since nothing's changed, we just roll back into it.
Start over here with reading it into the resolution.
Okay.
Or reading it into the record.
Mr. Attorney, will you read into the record the resolution?
Yes, sir, this is Resolution 2022-45, SDP 22-11, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, serving as Board of Adjustment of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving an application for site and development plan approval for a construction of approximately 13,500 square foot of mixed-use building in a PD Plan Development Zoning District and associated site development pursuant to Section 14.12 of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations located at the Square of Country Way on a portion of the Newberry Town Center Plan Development approximately 8.53 acres within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida on a portion of parcel number 02544-003-000, repealing resolutions in conflict, providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is passed, Resolution 2022-45 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Sir.
Nobody's joined us, so we didn't have anyone else to swear in. Before we begin, we need to disclose any ex parte communications or disclose whether any member physically inspected the property. Commissioner Maydon?
I have none, Clark.
Commissioner Martin?
I have none either.
Mr. Parker?
None.
Commissioner Coleman?
I have none.
And I have none. So we'll just start this off at the staff overview. JP, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the request before you is for a 13,500 square foot mixed-use building. This is a two-story building that has non-residential use on the ground floor and some residential units on the second floor. This is known as Building 3B. There's an existing Building 3. This is going to be in addition to that building. Here's the general location of Newberry Town Center. Here's the general location of the proposed building connecting to the existing Building 3. Again, they're going to be coming in multiple phases, building out this entire commercial component as market forces, encourage them to do so. Approximately 6,700 square feet of non-residential use on the ground floor. That's going to be for the expansion of the existing gym. So they'll have an internal connection in the building as well as some exterior connections, ingress egress to get in, but they're going to be expanding that gym. The gym owner was in our office this morning explaining there's a big demand for from his clients to provide more classes, equipment, et cetera, to expand his business. So he's looking to keep his people in Newberry, so serving the residents.
I need more area to work out.
On the second floor will be 6 dwelling units, and these dwelling units will be connected by a stairwell on the west side of the building and a loggia on the east side to the other existing dwelling units on the second floor of the existing Building 3. Here you can see the stairwell. This is ground floor, by the way. And then where those arrows are is the interconnection between the two. And staff is just simply recommending approval of this application. That completes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, JP.
Thank you.
That was a staff report. Are there any public comments? You want to cross-examine yourself? No. Okay.
Not in front of everybody.
All right, member of the decision-making body, You have any questions?
You say there's stairwells, is there gonna be elevators also? No?
2 floors, right?
But you don't have to have elevators, not even for handicap accessibility? Okay.
Any final arguments from the staff? None from the applicant? City attorney, will you advise the decision-making body as to the applicable laws and factual findings?
Substantial and competent evidence.
Do we have any questions for deliberations? Not me. Anybody? Seeing none,